Hello everybody, it is I, Krisis with a K, and today we're here with a rather huge haul around the world. Hello, hello, hello. You do not need to adjust your screens unless, of course, they're like fuzzy or you just need to like change the angle, because it is I, Krisis with a K. You're having a crisis live from the morning in New Zealand. If you're watching this live, it is the King's birthday. I think not actual, only observed. I'm not technically a New Zealand citizen as of yet, so I have no allegiance to the king, but we still observe his birthday. So today, this stream is just going to be about everything that I have hauled around the world, because mostly it comes from outside of New Zealand, I mean, all of it really, into my studio here. And because I collect all of the DC Finest line and all of the Marvel Epic line, that means I'm going to be going over all of the Epic collections and DC Finest that have happened over the last few months. But I also have some other things. I've got some omnibuses, I have some compendiums, I have some D&D stuff, and some other TTRPG stuff. So I'm going to be talking about all of that on this stream. I'm going to say hello to those of you who are early in the chat today and remind you that if you watch this stream live, you can join us for an after party. The after party is an exclusive Q&A and where I give my somewhat spicier opinions that I don't like to give live on the internet for everybody, but anybody who's watching live can come and view that. And then afterwards, it is available to Patreon members of crushingcrisis.com, my home on the internet. So let's just see who has stopped in early. The first chat of the week comes from Matt H. My friend, we are here to hang out with me and talk some comics in whatever format I choose. And that's because I was saying that this week was originally going to be the DC Omnibus Fantasy Draft. I've moved that out 2 weeks. I almost have the data all the way there, but I just wanted to be great for you. And I'm working in a way that everybody can submit their fantasy draft, which we didn't have when we did Marvel. Next week will be a DC Finest poll choices, because tomorrow the first ever DC Finest poll will launch with me involved on near mint condition. And this one's pretty special, not only because it's the first annual, but because we built this thing. We built this poll with cooperation from the DC Collected Editions department. So I'm really, really excited to share that with you. And that's why today is a haul. I just needed one that was low key, but also if you see how many books I wound up showing you, the piles were getting out of control. Moving on, Logan Wayne, All Around the World, and oh, we have to sing it. All around the world, and yeah. I'm going to see some goodies. We're going to workshop that second part, I think. Super Jop was here very early. Let's see who else had said hello. Yone Pauls, who's been following me closely enough to know that there are omnibuses currently being hauled around the world that aren't even in my home yet. Cedric and Ellen, bonsoir to you. Do I get my omnis and trades from Europe or solely from the States? Almost entirely from the States, because Europe shipping is even more expensive. Sometimes you can find something shipped from the UK that's not that expensive, but usually not omnibuses, but like sometimes single books. A lot of the booksellers in New Zealand do single books from the UK. Super Panda may have spent a stupid amount of money on omnibuses last week. Not as stupid as the amount of money I spent for this show. Shockmaster General, hello. Love the $29.99 line, which I teased in the title, will be showing up today. Let's see, Andy Stone, the photo. Andy, I read all of your comments earlier. They're so, so kind. Greetings from Austria, says Andy, and would like to thank me for my amazing website and the content. Their comments were so, so cool. I will not expose them all on the stream, except for this one. Love the duality of me and Omar. I do as well. Jade Rabbit is here, who scored some points. Oh no, that was me. I scored some points in my Marvel Omnibus Fantasy ballot because Omar just announced Secret Wars Omnibus Volume 4, which was my #1 pick. I was sure it was going to happen. Edward and Billiot is here saying hello to all of the crushers. Suspicious Sludvich, who changes their profile picture every week, which in a way confuses me, but then once it's consistent enough changing every week, then it comes back around to making sense to me. Def Kiss 1983 is here. Max is just here to dance. Adrian Montana's is here. Slasher 323 hair and makeup. Tina's kid crisis. No, please, we do not want to see that. She had some unkind words for the hair today, and I think the hair looks lovely. Let's see. Puddin' Tame is here. Ryan Bragg, I feel like I haven't said hello to you for a while. James Abel, the cerebro of the comic loving internet. One Wheelchair X is here. Thank you all so much for being so welcoming to One Wheelchair X. Last week, he was the first official guest I've ever had on one of my big Sunday streams. There will be more to come. Maybe we'll talk about that in the after show. Andy Stone photo, waving hello again. Let me just get a couple more. Lance the Library, Andrew Udavuda. You got to teach me how to say your name right. We know I really think names are important. Udevoida would be my guess. I bought Knights of Pendragon off of eBay for $30 after my price comparison stream. See the people succeeding all around the world as a result of that price comparison stream. LOCD Daria is here. And Xbox by Degrees. David and Wiz. Gosh, you guys, it's getting to the point that it's hard to say hello to everybody, which is so amazing and a thing I never thought would actually happen. Body by Leafield. Except for Cap doesn't have duck lips, but that's what we're going to do today. Okay. And so sorry if I didn't get to some of you. Saturday Morning Fan 31, 23, Blue Bat 96. And if I didn't say hello to Lance and Saz already, I'm doing that now. Okay. I want to open this with a disclaimer that I want to make my standard disclaimer whenever I do a haul around the world at this point forward. I don't believe in having books just to collect them. You have to think that this is my reference library. I have a massive, massive site, Crushing Krisis, which is supported by Patrons at patreon.com/Krisis. And without that Patreon support, I would not have a website, A, which is something that's been happening lately, and B, I need to refer to all of these books constantly. I forget what guide it was. I was just looking at a guide and I was like, oh, what's in that? I'm not sure. And I was like, oh, the whole point was I wanted to have a paperback reference library of all of Marvel. It used to be in floppies. And then when the Epic collection started happening, I was like, ooh, I don't have to do it in floppies anymore. For DC, I never thought that would ever be a thing. But because of the DC Finest, now I can have a DC Finest reference library too. And of course, I know the lines I collect, and we know that it gets out of control. And one of those out of control moments is going to happen today. But my point is, I am not here to encourage you to do consumerism for the point of consumerism. It's really important to know your budget. It's really important to know the space in your house. And it's really important to know why you have the books. You will see some of my books are sealed, but that's because I haven't had to reference them since I bought them. So I actually unsealed one this weekend that I have had sealed for 16 years, but its time finally came. So I just wanted to make that note that I know that sometimes haul videos from some folks kind of feel like an ostentatious display of collectorism. And even though I'm sure that some of this is going to come across like that, I don't want you to think that I'm hauling just to have giant shelves. I usually buy these things with a lot of intent. And as we go through them today, I'm going to talk about the intent of why I got them and also talk about if they're the right collection to have if you want that material. I'm gesticulating widely with this. This is one of my hauls around the world. I had to make a little order from Amazon Australia, and I needed a couple of extra dollars to get over. And it's a tiny, tiny whisk, which I almost kind of like as my baton here, as much as I like it as a kitchen whisk. But I make a lot of little sauces and marinades, right in a little 2-cup measuring cup. And so you can't put a full whisk in there. And then also I feel like, a fork just doesn't do it because you can't really get air in with it. I was always taught that when you whisk with a fork, you almost have to hold it almost parallel to the surface so that when you whip air in, the twines of the fork force air in. So I wanted a little whisk so I could just whisk on smaller things, and I'm obsessed with it. I finding a reason to use it every single time that I cook. So that is my first haul around the world. I will say that I am going to be answering questions that you have about the books or things directly relevant to the books. But if you have other questions about current events, new releases, life in New Zealand, that is all for the after party. And the link is already in the description below, but only for live viewers. So Jade Rabbit, who asks such great questions, asks about what is my strategy on omnibuses to buy. And I think that's a good way to frame this as we begin, because I'm going to show you the omnibus of perhaps my favorite material of X-Men ever. And my strategy is I know the lines that I want in oversize. And when I want something in oversize, I want it because I want a continuous shelf. I want it because I like the prestige of having it in those volumes, or I like the way that the oversize stuff is being collected as opposed to how it's being collected in paperback. And I decided a long time ago that for me, that oversize is pretty much just X-Men. And I used to do Fantastic Four in oversize. I had 4 or 5 Fantastic Four omnibuses. I realized I didn't want to keep up with that. I didn't need that prestige level. I was happy with them in paperback. Sold them. I used to think that I wanted Avengers in oversize. I was like, I don't care that much about Avengers, especially when Epics came out. I was like, goodbye. I still have the Avengers West Coast hardcovers or omnibuses, but I don't need them anymore because the Epic line has covered that now. So I really think it's important to decide why do you like oversized books? Because I do not think anybody should be buying an oversized book to read that material for the first time. I think that's crazy talk. And so I have oversized books for runs that I specifically want prestige. And so what I collect in oversized is actually really slim. And that's why you see me, I don't open a lot of omnibuses on these streams. So I collect all of X-Men through 2010 or 2012 oversized, which you will see I caught up on some things. I collect all of Wonder Woman oversize. I collect all of Sandman Universe oversize, and I collect anything Wildstorm oversize. And then after that, and then I have all Marvel events through 2012, but I already have those. They've all been released in original oversized hardcovers. So it's pretty rare to see me have something in oversize, like a complete line of omnibuses, that's not one of those things. And if you see me do that, it's often because I'm afraid it's never going to be collected well in any other way, which you will see a few of today. So this is directly in my strike zone. It is still in the wrapper, but that's because I've read it so many times and it's coming out of the wrapper for a reason soon. This is Uncanny X-Men by Kieron Gillen, which I think they chose the fuggliest covers for, because there are so many great covers on this run. And this, I forget if this is the main or the alternate, but this is a Terry Dodson cover. The cover they chose from Uncanny X-Men 1 from, what is it, 2011. It's one of my least favorite X-Men covers of all time, and I can't believe they put it on an omnibus. It annoys me so much. But let's talk about what this run is and what it collects and what it isn't. So Kieron Gillen took over for Matt Fraction on Uncanny X-Men. Actually, they had been co-plotting directly after Second Coming, but Gillen doesn't take on officially the role until Uncanny X-Men 534.1, which is the cover that this ought to have, and which is a great one-shot issue if you just want to get a flavor for what Kieron Gillen's X-Men is like. He continues to write Uncanny X-Men for about 12 issues, which is actually way less than a year because they were shipping pretty rapidly. Then Schism happens. Then he relaunches into Uncanny X-Men 2011, which hilariously, in way less than 24 months, puts out 20 issues of X-Men, the first 10 of which are all kind of establishing, and they have his Extinction team led by Scott, where he's like, we're not making excuses anymore. We're not taking no for an answer anymore. We're defending the mutants and we're defending this planet. And then it spins into 10 issues of tie-ins to AVX, which quite frankly are what makes AVX make any sense at all. And they are in the AVX Omnibus or the AVX Companion if you've bought either of those things previously. This is probably my favorite run of X-Men. I think Kieron Gillen has a completely unique sorry, I got distracted looking at comments. We'll do comments in a second. This has, and also my hair. I think I just killed it today. But anyway, Gillen has a really unique perspective where he always finds the right voice for the characters. And I think that really matters for X-Men because there's so many of them. And if you're using them just to stand in and like have their powers be represented, then you don't need that cast. Like if you're like, oh, I just have Storm here because we need lightning, or I just have Psylocke here because we need somebody with a psychic power, then I don't really think you're like making good use of your X-Men run. And Kieron Gillen, I feel like always comes in with a really good approach to like, what are that character's motivations? What do they care about? Oh, some Greg Land. Yes. And then Cyclops' resistance from the very end of this run. I feel like Gillen always comes in asking, who are these people? What do they want? If they're going to just show up for one panel, why are they there? And why does it matter to them to be there? And I just think that very few people in comics do that as well as Gillen. Every single run that he has, I feel like he's so good at kind of getting under the skin of his characters right away, which I think is just so important. So opening this up is actually a miniseries, Sword, where Gillen kind of he's really somebody who takes up the baton of kind of dropped comics a lot. And so he takes up the baton of Agent Brand, who had been in Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men run, and then he establishes some new kind of ideas around Sword. This, you know, if S.H.I.E.L.D. is on Earth, Sword is hovering above, and of course that comes back in Krakoa in a huge way. So that's the beginning of this book, and it's this much at the beginning, which I think is a little bit, I don't know if I would have put it at the beginning. I might have put that at the end as back matter, because it's separated from the rest of this by almost a year. It happened before Second Coming. Then we get to the first proper issue of Gillen's run, which is one of my favorite X-Men covers of all time, which should have been the cover of this omnibus, which is 534.1. And then we get into the rest of the run. So I would love to talk about this more. This was coming out in, 2010, 2011, 2012, when Crushing Krisis and the comics part of Crushing Krisis was just being born. So I was basically like making the guides almost like live to deal with and explain this material. So I've never had the chance to like talk about it online. So I'm really excited to talk about it. And actually, if you've been watching the shows and the after shows recently, I think we're going to be adding maybe a test run of a podcast to the mix of the channel. It will still appear here on video, but it will also be an audio only podcast. And it's going to have some folks that you know well from both the chat and from other channels joining me. And I do think Gillen will be one of the first things we talk about. So working on the technical specs of that behind the scenes, but that is coming soon. So now let me oh boy, as soon as I start talking about Gillen, everybody knows that I have a lot of opinions on that. Since it's also by Gillen, we will take this question that I normally would punt to the after show, which is, what is my opinions on Thought, Once, and Future by Gillen? I think it's beautiful, Dan Mora art. It just moves so fast, and I feel like as somebody who doesn't know the Arthurian legend super well, it wasn't incredibly satisfying to me, because Gillen would be referencing things like about the Green Knight or, whatever, that I just would be like, I don't get the reference. So I've always said those two slipcases are so beautiful. I don't know if I would read it again and again, but they're in my IST cart continuously and have been for years. I've been trying to find a really nice copy of Once and Future King, which people corrected me that was not the original in French. Mort d'Arthur is the original in French, but I just want some copy, whether it's a novel or a graphic novel, of like the original Arthur myth, so I could read it and refer to it, and then I feel like I would enjoy Once and Future better. Okay, let's see if anybody else had some things to say about Gillen. Oh, Electric Alpha saying, I missed you. I missed having you here in the comments. Please continue to join us. Peter, why am I talking crazy about Omnibus? Curtis got to me, huh? I'm not a big Omnibus person, William Lee. I mean, I have a huge Omnibus shelf downstairs, and I know you've seen me open a lot of omnibuses, but I get really excited for continuous runs of comics collected perfectly. In as much as some lines do that in Omnibus, I like omnibuses. But now that we have Epics and Finest, if I had to do it all over again, if I was starting now, I would just be doing Epics and Finest mostly, because they're capturing everything. That's what I want. I want continuous runs. Okay. How often do I double dip between Epics and Omnibus? Always, if it's one of my big runs. Like if it's, I buy every Epic, period, full stop. So except for Star Wars. So if the Epics do X-Men, I'm inevitably double dipping something. Okay, yeah, Dodson does draw a somewhat constipated Namor. Noah Horn saying, I read Fractions Run. I don't know if it's controversial, but I think it's underrated. I love Fractions Run. I do think it's underrated, but a lot of people are like, oh, that's just Broclops. Do I have all of the Kieron Gillen Image Deluxes? I don't, because Wick Div is not like my favorite of favorite series, but I do have a deluxe of his Phonogram, which I absolutely love. I'm thinking about getting the Compendium of Wick Div, just because it has all of those extra issues that originally were not collected along with the series. I asked him about that, and he said yes. So I'm thinking of getting that. Okay, let's see. And One Wheelchair X saying, this is the standard cover that I was showing. The DM cover is the Uncanny X-Men 1 cover, which is absolutely hideous, but for some reason One Wheelchair X purchased it. Okay, we are going to move on. I do have Die, an oversized hardcover. I'm obsessed with Die. In fact, since you brought it up, let's open a D&D thing before we get to more omnibuses. So I am not currently in a D&D campaign. I am currently not DMing or playing in the campaign I was playing in. So I really don't have an excuse to keep buying D&D books, but I still love D&D. I love the lore of D&D. I think for me, of course I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons, to spell it out. And I think for me, the best part of Dungeons and Dragons, it's the creatures and their ecology. I still have a love for the original monstrous manual from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in the late 80s and early 90s, that it not only described every creature, but it described the ecology of every creature. And I just think that was so cool. So to me, I love any kind of new D&D book or supplement by a third party that has like a ton of creatures in it and explains their world. So this one is called The Erevan's Guide to Death and Beyond. I love that. I love the way that D&D gives structure to the afterlife and devils and ghouls and stuff. It has this very cool DM screen, which if you play physically on a table, you put in front of you here, and then you can consult it for all of the things inside. Anybody can make a DM screen that has all of the standard calculations and stuff, but this one has all of the specific information about their things that they're adding. So like grafting, death and beyond, void taint. So that's pretty cool, and it folds like that. So what this is 2 books. It's this guide to death and beyond. It's D&D books. You realize that that comics are really not all that fancy after you start buying some hardcovers and other things. This is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at this like high gloss end paper. It's not to say that just because you have high gloss end paper, you're cool, but this is just a really, really nice book, and it's huge. It's 400 pages. It's got glossy pages and beautiful art throughout. And I just love that, and I love when I go on a D&D Kickstarter and I just see that they've got it figured out. Like, it's sometimes if you can see a page of the internal layout and it doesn't look really complete and the images don't look really, really cool, then you're like, I don't know if you've got it figured out. But when I saw this one, it was really great. And part of why I like this is it has some more difficult creatures to fight, because my party that I was DMing for is pretty high. This art is so cool. He's called Crimson Commander. He's a medium undead neutral evil, and he mostly just multi-attacks and has an Eldritch Blast, and a commanding voice. So, unfortunately, I'm actually looking at putting a lot of my D&D books into storage for a little while because I just want the room and I'm not actively using them right now. So this came with like a little supplement guide, which I'm not going to open all this right now because this is not a D&D show. I don't even know what's in here. But then there was another book, The Undying Accord. And this is the adventure book. So that has like all the creatures and crawlies and rules. This is the one that actually has adventures that you can play and run for your people. And since I do a lot of kind of death and underworld stuff, I thought it would be really useful to have this. Also, they do really good maps. I think maybe that's how I found them, because it's somebody I know who does maps, do maps for them. So that's a little bit of D&D. I know not all of your chief interest, but I promise there's a lot more comic stuff to come as well. Would anybody be interested in me ever doing a DM one-shot for some people that we know, like an Omar or a Lars, or getting Jess to play D&D? Would that ever interest anybody? Because there's been a lot of chatter about it over the years, and I am certainly potentially interested in it. All right, let's swing back to omnibuses. I do have one more D&D thing. So I think the next thing I need to show is this, which is a book that I did not buy. It's Marvel vs. Kraven. It's one of these digest-sized books that just has a little collection of kind of like kid-friendly adventures that sort of define a specific character. Sometimes it has their first appearance. Sometimes it just has some Marvel adventure stuff. This one in particular does not have any in-continuity material for Kraven. And the reason I have this, and many of you know who are in the United States, you already can predict what I'm about to say. The reason I have this is because I made one order from Funaticals. So I have to explain Funaticals, what it is, and why it was important for a few months there. Let's start from this concept. What does it mean for a book to be sold out? And what does it mean for a book to be on sale? For a book to be sold out, it could be sold out at the store level. Amazon's out of them, right? Amazon may be trying to reorder them from a distributor, but at Amazon currently there's none. Or the book is out of stock at the distributor level. Now, if it's out of stock at the distributor level, that means until there's an additional printing or a new edition, there's no more to supply bookstores with. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every bookstore is out of that book. And I know we've talked about that before, but it's really important to hold in your brain whenever you're like, oh, that's out of stock. Do you mean out of stock at a store level where maybe they could get more copies from the distributor? Or do you mean it's out of stock at the distributor level and the only copies that are left are the copies that are extant still at stores? Because we have to understand that first to understand the idea of why books are on sale. And it doesn't have to be books. I mean, think about your local grocery store, right? What does it mean when a certain crackers are on sale, right? There's a couple of different things that could be happening there. The grocery store could be using the crackers as a loss leader because people really like those crackers to get people in the door, and they're putting them on sale at a store level purely to take a loss. They could be putting them on sale because they way overstocked those crackers and they need to get rid of some of the crackers. And so they're kind of putting a deeper discount on them, maybe taking a little bit of a loss on them in order to move them. They could be, it could be that the crackers are discontinued and they want to make space on the shelf and they're like, we've got to sell out of these remaining crackers, right? Or sometimes the distributor is involved. Sometimes the cracker distributor says, hey, you can get like a 2-for-1 deal on pallets of these crackers right now. Maybe they overproduced. Maybe they're making them for a new flavor. Who knows? So the store buys them at a discount and then they put them on sale that way. Or sometimes the distributor is like specifically saying like, we are giving these to you on sale. We want you to run a sale. They'll actually participate with the grocery store and say like, hey, we're promoting this new flavor. Can you please put it on sale? We're going to give you a great deal. We're going to give you posters and things to hang up and promotional materials and things like that. You're unable saying if you need a sale to buy crackers, you're in a bad spot. No, dude, crackers are not cheap here. Kid Krisis needed some crackers to bring to some school thing. And I'm like, oh, crackers. Total, how much could that banana cost? $9 kind of moment for me, $15, whatever she says. What's her name? Lucille Bluth on Arrested Development. I had this moment, she's like, could you buy me some crackers? I said, of course. So I went grocery shopping yesterday and I thought, how much could crackers be? $1.99. That was the price I had in my head. ladies and gentlemen and theys and thems, there were crackers that were $5 a box, and they were not very fancy crackers. They were just crackers. Okay, so I need a cracker sale here in New Zealand. But my point being is that whenever you see omnibuses on sale, you need to talk to yourself and say, well, ooh, why is it on sale? Like, which one of those reasons is it on sale? Which brings us to, ooh, I have a good question there, Chris, which I want to help you because you're a fellow Kiwi, but I also might have to punt this to the after show. Long story short, if you're buying books in New Zealand that are like brand new omnibuses and things like that, it's actually often cheaper to get them from IST and DCBS than it is to get them from anywhere in Australia or from any UK sellers. And we can talk about that more, but I'm always happy to help a fellow Kiwi, which brings me actually to this topic that I've been skating around, which is Funaticals. So Funaticals is an eBay store that was selling Marvel omnibuses at a deep, hair in my mouth. Sorry, warning, trigger warning for whatever that noise I was just making. I can't get it. I don't want to smudge my lipstick. Okay. Funaticals was selling Marvel omnibuses super cheap. Controversially cheap. Cheap, like $30 a book. And you know that Marvel didn't like ask them to sell it that cheap, or did they? Because what was happening was either Marvel had vastly overstocked and was trying to get rid of them by the pallet, or some midstream distributor had bought too many pallets and was liquidating them directly to Funaticals. And so what that was doing was it was really hurting the market for Marvel, because of course you can't sell those books at full price anywhere else when they are being blown out at Funaticals. Also, some books which had already gone out of stock and people assumed were out of stock at the distributor level, surprise, it turned out there was a pallet of 500 of them that just got purchased by Funaticals. So the reason I got attracted to wanting to try it is I realized I probably should have bought this X-23 omnibus. I think every single comic book in this book is amazing. This is Laura Kinney, now known as Wolverine. This is all of her early stuff except for NYX, which you don't need. And I think every piece of material in this is absolutely great. It had been in my IST cart for literally a year. And then, of course, it went out of stock. And I was like, and then I realized it was on Funaticals. The thing is, for me to get things to here in New Zealand from around the world, the shipping is crazy expensive. So I did the math and I realized if I could find 3 Funaticals omnibuses around the $50 mark, that's where the shipping sweet spot was, that it would be like a decent amount of shipping. So I got this book. Now this is also in that 2010 period and before. It starts with series as early as 2005, right when X-23 is kind of brought into the, X-Men's world, because previously she had been a cartoon character, but it continues through collecting all of her 2010 series by Marjorie Liu, which is phenomenal and is great art, and I love it very, very much. And so this actually is happening in part at the same time as that Kieron Gillen run. So this was kind of all happening at once. Like the Kieron Gillen book came out, and I was like, oh, I probably need more 2010 X-Men. So then as I was looking around Funaticals, I was like, what else could I get? And they had, at that time, X Factor Volume 3 really, really cheap. And this was the one that had sold out the quickest, actually. It had gone away on IST, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to get that X Factor set, because again, I was dragging my heels. I have it all in original premiere hardcover, and I was like, maybe I don't need them, but it does fit into my remit of I want all oversized X-Men. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll get this. And so then I found X Factor Volume 2 in Australia that wasn't that expensive. And then I still had Volume 4, and I think you've seen me haul both of those already. So now I have all of the X Factor omnibuses, which is great because that's within my I collect X-Men. But then I needed a third book, and I was going through, and I didn't want to just randomly get a Spider-Man or whatever. I wanted to, and I love the Captain Britain omnibus, but I already have the constituent parts of that in oversized hardcover, so I didn't want to do that. And so, and this led me down a rabbit hole, I got this. X-Men 2099. Now, here's the thing. I own all of 2099 because if we step away from my remit of what I collect in omnibuses and just go to what do I collect in general, any complete line of intersecting continuity at a major publisher, I am generally interested in it up until 2000-ish. Because then we get into Ultimate Universe and I care less. But so 2099, Original Wildstorm, New Universe, Valiant, all that stuff I'm super into. I have every single issue of this because I was going to bind it. In fact, not only do I have every single issue, I have doubles of the crossover so that each of my binds could have all of the crossover stuff in them without having to switch back and forth books because I am slightly mentally ill. But to get this for $40, I was like, well, it is X-Men, even though it's not continuity X-Men. And who knows if I'm ever going to bind those books. It's so cheap. I'm making this order. Maybe I should just get it. So this is, I really try not to do this, but I kind of talked myself into it. Well, that started a cascading failure of judgment. Because then I was making my next IST order, and I started thinking, what happens if Marvel never collects this stuff in paperback? We've seen that. Like, I skipped out on all the New Warriors omnibuses, thinking they would surely get an Epic collection, and then Marvel never did an Epic collection for them. So I'm like, damn it, I should have got those omnibuses. So $20.99, some of the stuff is a hard sell. Part of the attractiveness of doing it in omnibus is it's like one book. You don't have to keep remarketing it and hope the audience will keep buying it. And right now, there's only three things that are not in $29.99 omnibus. And I have a $20.99 guide on Crushing Krisis. You could see this. There's none of Punisher $20.99, although I bet we're going to get that soon. There's none of Ravager $20.99, which is tricky because he's the one character that's not based on like an original Marvel character. And then there's also kind of like $20.99 companion, like World of $20.99 stuff, mostly starring Hulk, which is written a lot by Gerard Jones, so we might never get that, or they might just kind of like shove it in the back of the Ravager omnibus so they don't have to really think about it. But Marvel recently skipped What If 84, which is by Gerard Jones, in a What If collection, so we might never get that. But I started to be like, oh, like what if we really do get those other two omnibuses and all that's missing is the Hulk stuff, which really has nothing to do with anything. So that's how this IST order happened, because I here's the thing. I have worse FOMO now because it's so expensive to get omnibuses to New Zealand, even if they exist, even if they're in stock. It's so hard to get them here. So if I'm making an order from one of the stores that has reasonable shipping, I generally kind of go into it. I see a ton of comments from you. As soon as I get done talking $20.99, we'll do some comments, but again, only about the books I'm talking about. If you have other stuff you want to talk about, stay for the after show. So I got this Fantastic Four and Doom one, which is mapped really, really well, actually. And it is gigantic. It's a huge omnibus, which makes sense because the Doom series itself, we often thought it was going to need 2 books to do the Doom series. Not only does it have the whole Doom series, it also has the Fantastic Four stuff. So it's like bigger than any of us ever dreamed. So then I also picked up this Ghost Rider $20.99, which I have not read a single issue of, but I do own them all. This one's really slim because this was a pretty short series. And then, of course, I got Spider-Man $20.99, which I actually have read quite a bit of. And this is by Peter David. I didn't get the modern $20.99 because I already have that in trades. But this is another big one. And this is also something that I just knew that if it went out of print, I would have been like, oh, I should have got them. And then I'm chasing them down later at great expense. So there you go. Now I own $20.99, which to me, I don't think I should have done it. I got FOMO that I was going to freak out later if it never came out in paperback. But it does fit my remit of a complete alternate universe. And I do own them all in floppy already. So that it's not like I suddenly decided to get interested in this. Like it's something that I've been interested in for a while. Okay, so now I am going to scroll up to some things and really just focus on the questions that are about this. Superjob saying we're playing Dungeons and Kittens this Saturday. Does that mean you use kittens on the game board? I don't know how that will work. Patrick wondering if I will do a read-through of the week again. Stay tuned, because there are certainly some thoughts around that now that poll season is finally ending. Superjob saying for D&D, not a big fan of the 5th edition rules. I have played a bard. I did sing in game. I would sometimes make up parody songs in game or prep them ahead so I could mock my enemies viciously. And a few people saying they would be interested in a D&D related show. Wonderful stuff. One Wheel Track just played a D&D campaign before, but it was a lot of fun. Okay. I see a lot of really cool questions from some folks that have not been here every week, and I want to honor a few of them. But again, questions that are not about the hall are for the after party. So Ellen's are 7482 asking if I play Lego Batman. I do not generally play video games. I do have Cosmic Invasion because that's like a fun button masher to play with Kid Krisis sometimes, but I like comics. Why would I have time for video games? Which is not to say like, oh, you're dumb for liking video games. That would be time that I don't have on comics, and I need all the time I can get for comics. Okay, let's see if anybody has anything to say about the 2099 stuff. Oh my gosh, Samantha is here from Auckland screaming at her TV for a couple of hours watching tennis. Dr. Zero got that same Kraven book from Funaticals. Noah Horn missed out on X23 from Funaticals in the eBay cart for too long. As somebody who is a bit ADHD and has a lot of other things going on in my life, that happens to be way too often, where I decide I'm going to buy something and then I wait and it disappears from my cart. I probably lose $1,000 that way every year on stuff that I wanted to get and then I have to track down more expensive. So I'm trying to get better about if it's in the cart and I have the money and I really, you know, I've already budgeted for it, just hit buy and get it. And so I actually just did that before I went to sleep last night, and a couple things I needed for the house that were on sale because I just needed to happen. Edwin saying 2099 is one of his favorites. Saying hello to Geff House, who just arrived here late. Saz agreeing that epics are his go-to as well, but I do get omnis for lines that aren't an epic, which is why I do need that New Warriors. I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, I'm never gonna like New Warriors enough to want an omnibus. Well, I was wrong. And Yuri Paul saying George Jones do be writing green characters. Okay. One Wheelchair X checked Funaticals eBay store and they would be coming at £64 with shipping, which is basically the cheapest you can get here already. Sigh. These shelves are all IKEA Calyxes, Resi. And Cedric and Ellen has actually read Ghost Rider 2099. It's great as vengeance facet of the original Ghost Riders, but completely cyberpunk. And Andy Holcomb pointing out the second Spider-Man 2099 omnibus collects the Spider-Man stories from 2099 Unlimited. Well, I'm still not buying it. Those will just have to go uncollected in this house. Okay. Again, if you're not talking about the current books in the haul, I do have to say we're going to have to save that for the after party because there is just such a big haul to get through. So part of the reason I finally decided I had to pull the trigger on the X-23 book is because of this book. Daken, Dark Wolverine, my pansexual murder son, here in an omnibus that I never thought would ever exist. I don't know why they made it. I don't know who's buying it other than me. And Omnibo loves him too. I think it's going to be on deep discount, so I don't think you've got to be in a big hurry for it. But I love this character, and I love this run. I've talked about it so much. I love that he is morally questionable, morally flexible, and that he's just got his own agenda, and he doesn't care about his dad or mutants or whatever, and he's hedonistic. He's like, I might just want to have sex with you to have sex with you, or it might be because I'm trying to manipulate you. You'll never know. So when this became solicited, and I realized that Marvel's starting to kind of go in on this 2010, 2011 realm, because again, this started during Dark Reign, and then it continued into 2010, past Second Coming, so parallel to Gillen, parallel to X-23, I realized, actually, I've always wanted this in omnibus. Of course I'm going to get it. And if I'm going to get this, I'm going to get X-23. And then I realized if I was going to do that, I had to buy two omnibuses that I swore that I would never own because I do not like one of the runs. But the other run I've really come around on. So the one I don't like is this one, Wolverine by Jason Aaron. I never realized how slim this is. This just collects his early Wolverine writing and then all of his Wolverine Weapon X, a series I truly, truly despise. The reason I got this, and I can't say that I'm excited or that I feel good about it, is because over the years, I have really grown to love this run, Wolverine Goes to Hell. This is the 2010 relaunch, again, coming out of Second Coming, of Wolverine that's parallel to that X-23 2010 series, that's parallel to that Daken 2010 series, that's parallel to Kieron Gillen, that's parallel to Schism, because this actually has Schism in it. It's not in the X-Men line, weirdly. It should have been in that Gillen book, but mapping concerns are another thing entirely. So actually, I do think, I wouldn't say you have to have this to read Gillen, but it is weird that Gillen doesn't have Schism as it. I'm not trying to encourage everybody to go out and buy this. Also, this is kind of like the prelude to the version of Wolverine that's very silly and funny that we get in Jason Aaron's Wolverine and X-Men, a book I will not buy. I will not buy. That's where I draw the line. Because that continues into Marvel Now, and also I really do hate it, and there's no reason I need it because I don't need anything that comes on the other side of it. But this run, I am kind of excited to finally reread after reading it once or twice in the past. I talk about it on shows a lot. It's often my pick for one of the best Wolverine omnibuses you could buy. Honestly, if you're just going to get one Wolverine omnibus right now, I think it's probably Wolverine 1, Wolverine 3, this, or maybe the Miller omnibus if you really like Miller's hyper-violent kind of like Enemy of the State and Old Man Logan. So, for those counting, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nine omnibuses. And I'm not proud. And honestly, I'm trying to think. No. I think we made it to the end. Well, the next one is kind of, sort of an omnibus. Sort of, kind of. But let me just see what everybody has said about my reveal of that Daken. So does the Daken collect issues of Wolverine Origins? Only his major issues of Wolverine Origins. So it does have his first arc where he's fully introduced, Wolverine Origins 11 through 15. And then it has the crossover with Wolverine Origins 47 and 48. It's a pretty big book. There's maybe another 4 or 5 issues I would have excerpted to put in there just for context. But I think that was a good choice. I found the book build on Daken is not the best compared to recent iMac books. If anyone is a book build nerd, which I certainly am. Edwin Billiot saying it's in your next DCBS order. That's funny because I already got it in mine. I guess maybe yours is like off a few weeks from mine. Ali Nazari says, I love Daken too, and I also love the burn brown and tan suit. Okay, so many people, it's not just me. Logan Wayne saying pansexual murder son. He is mine. That is true. Daken is my spirit animal, says Max. That's a phrase that we try not to say anymore because it's a little bit appropriated. So we have to think of things other than spirit animal. You could say that he's like your pansexual murder son, for example. But or you could say he's your inner beast. Is he your inner beast? Okay. And also, you know, a lot of people actually liked Daken. How long did my Funaticals order take? Oh, it took a while, but it's hard to separate that between the fanatical of it all and then also just getting it to New Zealand. Carlos Arguelles asking me how many Wolverine omnibuses I have in my collection. I have all of his classic omnibuses. So what are we up to? Like 7 technically, Not Dead Yet is. And it used to be it. And now I have those 2. I will continue buying pretty much everything of his up until 2012 because that's within the scope. So I think we have 1 more to finish his main series, and then we're going to need probably 3 to cover his 2003 series. So I probably am in the market for 4 more Wolverine omnibuses. Max, I'm not even putting that one on screen. That one took it too far, Max. Okay. So here's the one other thing that, gosh, I have to stop doing that because then, do you see this? Yeah. So here's the one other thing that I'm very excited for. And the other one's around here somewhere. I just forget where I alphabetized it on the shelf, honestly. But this is Copra by Mikel Fife. And I am absolutely opening this so you can enjoy the art of Copra. I do recall opening a prior one. So Copra is an indie comic that Mikel Fife started on his own. Like totally independent. Later, it kind of got adopted by Image as a publisher, but it was all his own work. And it is like as if, and I've said this before, so please excuse me if you've heard me say this before, but I think it's the best analogy. What if back in high school, your best friend who sat next to you started drawing superhero comics like in the margin of their notebooks? And what if at first they were like pretty messy? And you're like, okay, whatever. And then over time, this really cool story started to emerge. And it's kind of like Suicide Squad of the independent set. And that's what Copra is. And even looking at the art of this one compared to the first one, his art has come along so far. Like the sequential storytelling is so much stronger. And that I don't think I've read that far into this one because I think I got like 1 paperback and then I got a few digital issues because I just was interested. And then I was reading some digital issues at the end of the run because it was coming out during my pull list show, and I realized I just want to read this from the start. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So this is as big as like a Dark Horse library edition. It's bigger than an omnibus. We'll use that Wolverine omnibus for comparison because it's small and I can hold it up. So it's bigger. Sorry, get them nice squared. So it's about library edition size. He is putting them out through Image, so it has the Image logo on the spine. The build quality is really nice square spine. The pages are like a beautiful quality, and I just love it. I think sometimes you all maybe don't know or underestimate how much I love indie comics because there's such a crush of Marvel and DC to talk about, and honestly, Marvel and DC get the clicks, and so that's what I talk about because I know that's the way to get people watch the videos. But y'all, I love indie books so much, especially indie continuity. I mean, this is a series with 50 issues of this team and this continuity all in one place. I love that. And so for me, that's like the ideal. Like there's nothing more fun than that. If I could, have a website all about and have a YouTube channel all about talking about all indie books who does that kind of stuff, I would talk about all those indie books nonstop and only those indie books. So Richard B42, who changed his profile picture, saying those Wolverine books scream, I'll wait for modern epics. Oh, I only buy classic epics, every one of them. I have a couple modern ones in this haul, which I'll talk about why. So because I was buying trades in that period, so I have everything they're going to do in modern epic. I mostly have it in trade. And the only reason I'll rebuy it in modern epic is if the modern epic just does it better than the trade did. So I'm not going to buy modern epics to replace trades I already have, but I will buy an omnibus to reply. I don't know. I don't pretend that I make any sense. Okay. Let's see. Does that mean Daken will be opened a lot sooner than 16 years? Certainly. Matt H. saying, I broke down and bought all the Wolverine Omnis a few months back, even the ones I don't care for as much, as terrifying nods to the completionist part of my brain. Yeah, again, I'm not saying any of that was wise. And that's why I'm going over those big things at the beginning of the show, because after this, we're getting to the stuff that's kind of more routine that I was going to buy no matter what. Richard Fearing saying, I've been hearing about Copra from some of my friends thinking about getting it. Again, if you like really indie, really kind of all done by one person, which means some rough edges, some imperfect storytelling, but all by one person and independent, and you like the idea of like a Suicide Squad type of story, disconnected about from like all of the rest of continuity, I don't think there's anything more fun than Copra. I just think it's so much fun. Cedric and Ellen asking, could I just do a show about indie books? Here's the thing. Times that I have made indie books the main topic in the past, it just does not get views. And I am here to do the shows that I want to do, but I also am here to kind of like grow my audience and do what the audience wants to see and talk to all of you wonderful people. And so if I do too much indie focus and then people don't show up, I don't get to talk to all of you wonderful people. So I think in a world where there are multiple shows on the channel and people are watching a number of different shows, I probably could get away with occasionally doing some indie. And I think that's one of the reasons I want to try the podcast, because I think I could sometimes do some indie stuff on that. And I think hopefully if everybody's interested in the ongoing series of what I'm doing on the podcast, they will still show up for an indie episode. But I also get it. Like there's certain indie stuff that I won't show up on other channels for, because it's just not part of my universe of reading. So I always need to balance like wanting to make sure people stay interested and stay educated about the stuff they care about, and then also getting to talk about all the books that I want to care about. So I think I'm going to do all the other non-epics and DC Finest, and then we're going to dig into the epics and DC Finest. So the next book that I have here is one of the most banned books in America. It is Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. And I, of course, love supporting queer books and queer media. And I realized that this was getting all these book bannings, and I was like, what is it about? Like, why is it getting book banned? Should it be a book that I have in my library personally? Should it be a book that I have in my library because of Kid Krisis? And so I can tell you right now, probably one of the reasons it's banned is that I turned directly to a page that talks about somebody being a teenager and having sexual fantasies as a teenager. This is an interesting thing because it's like just telling a story with a teenager in it. Teenagers have amorous thoughts. And it's a thin line between storytelling about that and then storytelling about it in a sexualized way. And so I can imagine that, in addition to the queerness, is one of the reasons that this often gets banned. But also it shows a assigned female at birth character working on her first binder. So that is, and at the time, I didn't know the dangers of ace bandage binding. It can lead to cracked ribs, says the narrator. A few weeks after the show ended, I went to a formal school event wearing the ace bandage and a too long tie. What had felt liberating on stage felt embarrassing in public. I put the bandage away and never wore it again. So really, really interesting to talk about trans issues in a way that's just like storytelling about somebody's actual life. And wow, I'm just seeing, I don't want to like read it out loud because I want you to be interested in it, but also I can see why it gets challenged. I'm not saying it ought to be challenged, but I mean, there's a panel where somebody says, do you feel sad that you weren't born with a dick? And the person says, sometimes. And so then there's like a whole discussion about dysphoria that comes from having your period when you're somebody who's a trans guy and you are still having your period. So I have some young people in my extended life who are going through this. I certainly went through aspects of this myself, not realizing that I was non-binary as a teenager and being really upset about some of the changes to my body as a teenager, not realizing at the time non-binary was a thing or an option. I do remember at the time when my legs started getting hairy. I'm Italian. I have very hairy legs. I found it like viscerally upsetting, like so upsetting that I did not wear shorts ever all through high school. No one saw my legs. If I was in gym class, I had like tights on under my shorts or like hospital scrubs that were just loose under the shorts. If only in a summer camp or pool context would I ever have shorts on. And I realize now it's because there are things that are happening to me that did not align with my vision of my identity, my body. At that time, I just thought I was a weirdo who like I just thought I was a weirdo. And I was writing all this like angsty poetry about my stupid hairy legs. And so I think it's so amazing that this book exists now. It should be in libraries. Kids should get to read about it. And it's not just for trans and non-binary kids. It's for cis kids to understand, because you know what? There is a body horror element to puberty for everybody. And I think it's really important to show cis kids who are like kind of having like a why are my underarms hairy moment, that like it's no different for trans kids. Everybody thinks it's weird. And even as a cis kid, you don't have to like everything that's happening to your body, right? Like you might be a boy and you might not like that you're getting a mustache and really want to shave it off. You might be a girl and not really like the way that your breasts are developing. And like really, I know plenty of cis women that wear binders or had later in their life gotten breast reduction surgery because they didn't like that. So I think it's just like, I think it's healthy for everybody that a book like that exists, and that a book like that can be placed in libraries. So Zerkan Allen saying, I've read Genderqueer in the Dutch translation. It is enlightening. Edwin Billion saying, I need to get that to support queer books. Lance will have to read Genderqueer. Sounds interesting. Hugs to Little Krisis, says Logan Wayne. And nobody should feel they are alone, saying Ali Nazari. And here's the thing. I would love to talk about this in full on the channel. Once I realized that, like, what it was and that I hadn't read it and that it was a graphic novel, I kept seeing that it was a challenged book. And I didn't know. I don't even think I realized it was a graphic novel. I thought it was like just a autobiography. I was like, oh, that's going to go high on my list, because another thing I want to get back to doing is talking about when I read stuff from my giant to read list. I'd like to read at least 20 things a year. And so then it's like, ooh, do I talk about that on a podcast? Do I come into a show? Is it a segment on another show? So kind of to continue to answer your question, I do think that there are ways for me to talk about indie books, which I just did, but I have to kind of fight. I think if I package them in a recurring way that makes you maybe want to read some of them or come back and read them with me or see what my reaction was and watch me check them off my list and then see my rankings shift, I think putting a little bit around a little gamification around that, I think would probably be something many of you would be into. I know I would. Elon saying, hello, my friend. All the best books get banned. I'm thinking of Moss being banned recently too. I'm slowly making my way through Index Liborium Prohibitorum, which I guess is an index of things that were banned. So something that was happening when I was making that order with X23 is that, so there's no free shipping from IST to New Zealand. But what happens is there are shipping thresholds, and I know it sounds like I'm sponsored by IST. I'm not. Please, IST, if you want to sponsor me, if you want me to be your international spokesperson, I'm ready. Put me in, coach, because they're really, IST and DCBS are really the only places that I order from. And that's because they have an amazing sweetheart deal with FedEx. And so I can get things from them that would cost from anybody else like 2 or 3 times. But there's shipping thresholds. So like 2 trade paperbacks, I think the minimum anything costs is like 25 US bucks to get shipped here. Think about that. But then there's thresholds. So like I can usually get like 5 or 6 epic collections or like 3 compendiums around a $70 shipping mark, again, US dollars. Then if I start adding omnibuses, something with like a few paperbacks and 1 or 2 omnibuses, usually around $90 shipping. And then if I go crazy and I try to put 3 omnibuses, and then we get into like hundreds of dollars shipping, which I sometimes have to do from DCBS just because of the way things shake out. But I don't do an IST. By the way, ADHD, I meant to refer to this earlier. The box that this Copra book came in from DCBS is the biggest box I've ever received. Not by volume. I've gotten like bigger boxes that have like a dehumidifier in it, but just in terms of, I don't know if I've ever been shipped in the mail a box that didn't contain furniture that was this big. And I guess they felt like their standard box isn't big enough to lay library editions flat. And it had the Daken omnibus in it. So it was like, it was like this big. It was like a sheet cake for a party of 100 people. I couldn't even, thank goodness my arm is better now. And so I could pick it up. But yeah, that box was gigantic and the shipping on that was insane. But my point being, for IST, this is all, you don't have to experience this, all of you Americans, but for IST, for me, when I see that I've already hit a $70 threshold or a $90 threshold in shipping and I don't have that much in the order, it's like, ooh, what little stuff can I squeeze into the order and the shipping threshold won't change? I mean, I guess you have that sometimes when you order from local places. So I realized that there were 2 books from series that I have everything else of. So I don't know these books specifically, but I have everything else in these series. So Lock and Key, I have every standard size Lock and Key hardcover. This is Lock and Key, the Golden Age, which is not just the Golden Age. It collects a couple of different Lock and Key things, including their intersection with Sandman. Maybe that was the Golden Age, but I want to say that there were multiple different things. Oh, this text is real darn small. Hold on. I do have my contacts in, but we're about to get a good test of them. So this is Lock and Key Small World, Open the Moon from Lock and Key Guide to the Known Keys, Lock and Key Impale Battalions Go 1 through 3, which I do remember reading on Pull List, and Lock and Key The Sandman Hell and Gone 1 and 2. So I really want to dig these out and put them all on my shelf, but I just don't have a lot of room on the shelf in this room for indie right now. Hopefully, I think I'm going to probably be moving house next year. And maybe if I do, I will finally have room to put all that stuff out. But then here's the other thing. I have all of Matt Kint's Mind Management. It's one of my favorite series. It's actually my favorite format of book. Most of the Mind Management books from Dark Horse that were the original hardcovers, they're standard hardcover size, but they're like way, way thicker. They're like that thick. And they have this really cool toothy matte paper, which this also has. This was just a short extra series that he added later to revisit the world. It's called Mind Management Bootleg. So it's not the same size as those books. And it has like some behind the scenes material and scripts and stuff, but it continues that world a little bit. But I love the Mind Management hardcovers. It's absolutely a series I plan to read again. I think it's really cool. It's like an indie spy book where what if the whole way that your spy agency works is you forget that you were ever a part of the spy agency, which of course many people have done that riff. It's how Marvel did Secret Avengers. It's kind of like Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, but I really, really think it's particularly well done. I do think this is the best thing that Matt Kint has actually ever written. I've read a lot of Kint. Some of it's not for me. So I love those original books. I think there's 4 or 5 of them and they're so satisfying to hold. I just think the form factor and the weight and the paper is perfect. So when I realized I didn't have this, even though it's something newer and I don't buy a lot of new, I was like, oh, much like the Lock and Key, I really want to add that to my shelf so that I have all of it. I don't know where I just put that Lock and Key. Okay, we're almost to the end of non-Epics and DC Finest, and then we'll talk all about Epics and DC Finest. I'm sure a lot of the comments right now who are... new Krisis pronunciation dropped. What did I say wrong? I never know what I said wrong. Oh, Xbox by Degrees, I want to be sure to be clear about this, although I saw everybody in the chat talking about it, because I sometimes forget that not everybody comes along with me on every story, and that's not just my comic book stuff, that's also talking about gender and queerness and stuff. So cis is CIS, which is basically means not same. Is same. So if trans is not same or different, or by comparison, cis means same. So if I'm using cis, I'm using it meaning in shorthand for cisgender, meaning somebody who is the gender that they start out as, right? So I certainly lived as somebody who is cisgender for a long time. I present in many social situations as somebody who's cisgender, and I really don't care. If you watched Omnidog this weekend, you heard him use he, him pronouns for me, and he joked that he's grandfathered into using them because he used them for me for so long. And I was like, I'm not going to get offended if you don't call me they, Omnidog. And so he perceived me for many, many years as a cisgender male, somebody who has the same gender as I start out with. Technically, some non-binary people think of themselves as trans because they're under the trans umbrella because they are a different gender. Some people, some non-binary people are like, I don't want that because that labels me by gender, and I am trying to exist outside of gender, so I don't want to be cis or trans. We could have a whole separate show about that. Maybe I'll learn some more about how some people think about it by reading the Genderqueer book. Cody Collects is here. Cody is on my short list to do some kind of collaboration with. Hopefully by doing the podcast, I will get closer to being able to do things with Cody. John asking if I have to pay customs or imports in New Zealand. You have to pay GST, which is our sales tax, for sellers that sell a certain amount of volume, but you don't always have to pay it if you're buying like one book from one place somewhere that's a small bookseller. But then over $1,000 you have to pay additional tax. So from some places, like there's this set of Madman libraries that I want to get so bad on eBay right now, but not because it's from eBay. Not only would I pay the GST, but then I would also pay a customs tax on top of it, and I just don't have that kind of money. Lock and Key, Noah, really stuck with me. It's quite violent, and it's quite like bracingly violent in a way that I don't think the TV show fully got to. I think the TV show is much more kind of like WB. The book is disturbing at points, but I just think that the world of all of the keys and what they do and like where they came from, I love a book that fully pays itself off. I love a mystery that like the mystery fully gets solved. I love a story that like all of the story elements make sense. And even though it's a little bit of a brutal book for me, I do think that it is a story where all of the elements made a lot of sense. And that to me is like the most satisfying kind of thing. How much confidence do I have remaining in Dark Horse as a publisher? Isn't Matt Kint kind of out of it already? Yeah, Dark Horse has gone through some difficult stuff. I mean, they're kind of always lived and die by their licenses. They don't have a lot of their own properties. And so when the licenses go away, it's really hard for Dark Horse. And plus they're owned by this Embracer, or I don't know if it's French, Embracer group. It doesn't look great for them. So I am certainly not getting super dedicated to collecting a lot of Dark Horse editions other than Hellboy, which I usually collect. But sometimes they've got the stuff that I want. Perfect segue. Oh, actually, no. Sorry, not perfect segue. We have a few other things to talk about first. 4 smaller things, and then we're going to get into the DC Finest and the Epics. Okay. Let's see. I have not read Nightmare Country by Tynion. Sorry. So I cannot answer that question. And stuff like that are not about the actual haul. Please hang out for the after show. Elon saying Lock and Key is now available in compact edition, so an affordable way to pick it up and give it a go. Dark Horse right now, they are unionizing. I have some things that I want to say about petitions that I will say in the after show. But I will say the best kind of petition is a petition where there's somebody actually listening and to whom it matters. And so please look into every petition you sign to decide if that is the case. Okay, I have 4 smaller things, and then we're going to get to the DC Finest and Epic Collection Hour. I'm obsessed with this. First of all, this is tiny. It's a digest. So it is actually even smaller than the Kraven digest. It's like a really, really little pocket comic book. And it's called The Future Is... It's too short to be F'd. F-U-C-K. Oh, no, it isn't. Maybe it's The Future Is F'd. It has this beautiful J. Lee cover. And I was looking at this in pull list all last year to be like, what is it? Why can't I read it? And it wasn't available digitally. And the more it wasn't available digitally, the more I got obsessed. So I'll read you the back copy, but then I'll explain it because I have been reading it a little bit. The hacker wars are over. The black hats won. Who will save us from the world that's coming? Here's what's so interesting about this. First of all, it's got a real pedigree. It's written by Fred Van Lent, who wrote a ton of Marvel, wrote Hercules, wrote Hulk, wrote in the Valiant universe, like a really, really good writer. Second of all, the art, although it is small, and I do have a little bit of trouble with how small the text is, because it is really small. I wish I could have gotten it digitally, but the art is actually incredible. Like, this is better than most Marvel and DC comic books. It's on this really kind of toothy newsprinty paper. So there is a little bit of show through on the paper. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's a cheap book. This one was only, I think, $9.99. And here's what's so interesting about all this. This is being made by a computer security company, and they are committed. And it talks about this in the back matter. It's edited by Joe Keating, who is a writer as well, and who I definitely have some stuff in my collection. Didn't Joe Keating do Shudder? I forget. But it's got, like, there are real comic book people working on it. The logo design is by Ryan Hughes, who's like a real comic book designer. But they started this comic company to be able to talk about security issues, but not just as like a promotional one-off. You know how you'll see one of those comics like Iron Man and BlackRock keeping America safe. They're like, no, we want to tell a complete story in a complete fictional world that kind of explains what is hacking, how can you keep yourself safe, but in not kind of like a schoolmarmy educational way, but has like a real actual plot to it. So here, I'm going to read you a little bit about the making of this book. I know what you're thinking. Why did a cybersecurity company make the comic book I just read and greatly enjoyed? That's a strange move, isn't it? Now, I will say this text is so small. I really struggle. I only have context in, but I mean, they're reading context. It may not be as strange as it seems, especially when you think about which cybersecurity company you're talking about here, and how comics and all things cyber have a rich history deserving of bold new chapters. Hold on to your butts, folks. This story is good. So it kind of talks about everything, and one of the sections is from InfoSec to comics. Like with all things hacking, Rekka knew that they would have to break things to make them stronger, to experiment in new ways to make truly compelling work, bridging together the worlds of cybersecurity and comic books. What if we had a blue bear fight a red bear, reflecting the ongoing struggle between two red teams and blue teams? Bear versus Bear was born. So it kind of talks about like all of the ways that they've thought about storytelling and how they could get things across about cybersecurity and storytelling. But again, I cannot emphasize enough, if you didn't know that this was effectively kind of a subsidized marketing material from a cybersecurity company, you would just think it's like a really cool, really thoughtful book that's kind of like about like hacking the world. It's really not that different from Tiny and the World Tree. I think if you have the eyesight, you can enjoy this. You should pick it up. They say that they have a full, they're sticking to it. They're like, we have the funding for this and we're doing it and we're telling the whole story. I think they said it's going to be like 6 or 8 or 10 of these. We'll see. I mean, I'll be impressed if they even do a full second one, but unlike a comics publisher, they have the funding for it, and this is super cheap. So they're, again, not only subsidizing making the comics, but subsidizing these. Now, I will say, I know I've said it 5 times, the text is really small. So you have to love, if you are into DC Compact Comics and things like that, maybe you'll be able to read it. I struggle. I mean, I have to wear my glasses and really do one of these. But for the form factor and making it cheap and available, it's really cool. And I'm sure Kid Krisis is going to be obsessed with this once I'm done reading it. I don't know that it's entirely appropriate for her, but I haven't hit anything inappropriate yet. And it's got like a real comic book writing team on it. So I actually want to come back and tell you about it because it's been so high on my list, and because it wasn't available digitally, I thought I was just never going to read it. So I kind of had like swept it off to the side of pull list. But this was, I love J. Lee covers, and I love the whole concept that it's like really about actual cybersecurity. So I'm obsessed. Like I've already been reading, it's been on my bedside table, and I'm really obsessed to read more and then give you a full review on that. Let's see. I would love to talk more about life in New Zealand and why I moved to New Zealand and things like that. And we can talk about that in the after show. I was right that Joe Keating did Shudder. Cody collects things as somebody in the cybersec field. That's very interesting. Oh, you should absolutely pick it up. It's on IST. It's like $10. Just get it. I mean, your opinion on it would be so cool. Maybe that's the episode that Cody comes on the podcast on when the podcast starts. Okay. Time to bust out my magnifier glass. I mean, you saw me being like, and Super Job saying, small print's not a big deal. I don't read my comics anyway. So while I was making that order and I needed to throw a few small things in, I was actually talking to you all about this on a recent show. Somebody asked me what are some of my recent indie comic book faves. And I mentioned Fairlady, and I was rhapsodizing about it. And I realized even though I try to hold the line with never buying stuff that's like newer than 2016, which is now 10 years, sometimes you just have to have something in your collection that you love and you would read and reread. I love this. I think this is one of the best books that's come out from Image in the past 15 years. I think it should still be running. I think it could have been as big as Saga. I just think it came out at a weird time and people didn't pick it up. I think it's brilliant. It's about this private investigator in a fantasy world where the private investigators are not supposed to be women, but she is. And the town where she lives is the desiccated remains of a giant that has fallen to earth, and now the town has been built up around its skeleton. And she nominally works for this wizard, but really she's kind of doing her own thing. And it's got a very kind of like procedural, it breaks comic format sometimes to talk about how or why she's investigating. So it kind of feels a little bit maybe like a Matt Fraction book, maybe like Fraction's Hawkeye. At some points it has a little bit of a Kelly Thompson vibe to it. But the cool thing is that each one of the issues is its own investigation. And she's got this heavy sidekick that's this cat person, and he's very, very funny, but there's something interesting about the relationship you kind of learn as it goes on. And then as we get to the last issue, you realize that there are some bigger elements that tie these mysteries and stories together. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. It's just such a fully realized concept. I love a book that can tell individual stories but still pays them off at the end of an arc. I think that's a really specific skill that a lot of writers don't have. This is written by Brian Shermer with art from Claudia Balboni, who's amazing, Marissa Louise as the colorist, and Shari Shakahama, who I believe is the letterer. And I mean, this is like a 5 out of 5 for me. It's really one of my favorite. Actually, Shara Shakhana was one of the colorists. The letter is David Bowman. Really one of my favorite books of the past few years, and I really think Kid Krisis is going to love it, but I'm actually really excited to reread it physically. So since I needed a couple more things to put in my cart to get to that shipping, take advantage of that shipping threshold, I got that. And then the other thing I got to take advantage of that shipping threshold was this, the Cull. Now, I never need to explain why I buy a Kelly Thompson book. I'm a Kelly Thompson superfan. I had already read this because I subscribed to Kelly Thompson's Substack, and she released it originally in Substack. Then I bought the digital single issues as they came out from Image. Now I have this, and I will continue buying in every format because I believe in Kelly Thompson. But more than that, I am obsessed with Matea de Luis. I think he is one of the most exciting artists working today because he does this photorealistic, highly rendered, highly lit look, but it doesn't. It's kind of in this uncanny valley where it really feels round and real and like it's in the real world without looking computer generated, because he plays with things like depth of field and focus and lighting and shine and things like that. Every time he turns up somewhere, he worked with Kelly Thompson originally on their Jessica Jones digital original at Marvel, which is fantastic. Then he did a couple of issues of Captain America at Marvel. He also did, I know I'm forgetting a big thing that he did at Marvel that I really enjoyed. It's just not coming to me right now. But then he has also done some fill-in issues for Absolute Wonder Woman. I think we already looked at that page. And I'm just obsessed. And the great thing is, he's not just a digital artist. If you go on his Instagram and look at his drawings, his pencil work is incredible. Like it's not that he only can do this. He can do so much. And part of why this looks so good is because he pencils so well underneath of it. Weirdly, I would compare him to Phil Noto, even though their styles are very different. But just because Phil Noto is somebody who paints very, very fast, if you've ever seen like him iterate through stuff, but he understands how to start in a physical medium and then wind up with something that looks so like painterly and real. And his characters look like they have weight and they're not like a cartoon. They look like an illustration of a real person. I think that's what I love. The story here, there could be more of it, but there might not ever be. It does not say volume. It does say volume 1. Very small. But it's complete on its own. And I would say that it is very much a Stranger Things sort of rift, because there is a rift in reality. I won't say why or how. And this group of people kind of wants to look through to the other side. So it's kind of Kelly Thompson's spin on Stranger Things. It's a quick read. And I really, this is actually one of my favorite pages. I remember showing this on Pull List last year. Her looking through the door, the crack in the door, and then her mom being asleep on the couch. I just remember pulling it out. So I love this book. I love Kelly Thompson. I usually share everything Kelly Thompson with Kid Krisis if it's appropriate for Kid Krisis. Kid Krisis has been a Kelly Thompson super fan forever. So I'm very, very happy to own this, and I highly endorse it. I think it's great to read digital because honestly, I don't think a standard comic book size does justice to Matteo De Lewis's art. So I would actually say read it digital if you can, if you like to do such things. Okay, let's get a couple of comments here. What's the reason I do not collect Marvel after Marvel now? Space in my house. I mean, people have really heard me talk about it a lot. I just think everybody needs a boundary for their collection. And I had Marvel Now in trades. And as I kept buying it, I thought, this is a treadmill you can never get off. Here's the thing I don't think anybody should do. You should never commit to buying all of X. Like, I'm going to get all of X-Men. Even when I say I'm collecting all of X-Men, I mean all of X-Men up to a point, right? Up to 2012. I'm going to buy every omnibus. Well, omnibuses are going to keep happening. Marvel has over 600. DC has over 300. You can't have every one. Even me saying I'm going to get every epic collection, that has boundaries. I'm not doing Star Wars. I'm not buying every modern epic. I'm trying to collect all of the Marvel Universe up through 2000 in epic collection, which is crazy and a lot, but it still is a boundary. And so I just think saying like, I'm going to keep buying any Marvel comic that I find interesting forever. That's fine if you're not saying you're going to buy every Marvel comic. If you're like, oh, I'm going to keep buying X-Men as I like it, but I'm not going to try to buy Cap or Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers or everything. I'm just focused on X-Men. But I always think it's really important to draw a circle around your intent as a buyer. Jay Lee tip. This ends tonight, published by Image. I love Jay Lee. Okay. Some people talking about things that I was just talking about. I'm only obsessed with Matteo De Lewis drew Big Barda in that one issue of Birds of Prey. He did Yum. Okay, De Lewis needs an ongoing right now. All right, I have one more thing that is not a Compendium Finest or Epic Collection, and that's this. It's a book that I already love. It's March. It is the complete trilogy in one volume of the life story of John Lewis, of course, a major civil rights leader and longtime congressperson in the United States. We have each of the 3 volumes individually here in the house, but I wanted to have them all in one book. That was really attractive to me. And especially in a nice hardcover format. So I picked it up. I want to say that these pages look a little bit bigger than the ones in the digest. Maybe it could be my imagination. But this Kid Krisis has it. She read all of it. I really think it's important to educate kids about civil rights. I don't think there's any too young to educate kids about civil rights. She started learning things about, Rosa Parks and protests and things. I think when she was around 7 or 8 years old, it started to be topical in schools, just at a really light weight. And so I think when she was around 9 or 10, I started giving her March, and I kind of sat with her as she read through it and let her ask questions. I think the greatest way to create a mind that's a liberated and accepting mind kind is to educate them about all the things that have happened in the past that came before, that like, wow, can you believe that society used to blah, blah, blah. Exactly. That. So if you don't educate on the past, are you doomed to repeat it? Your Honor, Paul is saying, is the book heavy? It's moderately heavy. I mean, it's pretty hefty. It has nice cover boards, which has got a little bit of dust on it, because I was bringing it to doctor's appointments for a while, so I'd have things to read in the waiting room. So I like it. It's got some heft. I would definitely pick this up over the individual ones. The individual ones are fine, and they're actually really nice for small trade paperbacks, but it's just like a really, really nice addition. Lance Library says, I have the paperbacks, including an autograph version of book 1. I would love it if they did it oversized, because I think the art is really cool, but I just like having it in a hardcover. So that is something that I am excited about. Okay. Now let's talk about compendiums. And I made some notes on these, because now we're moving out of stuff that I'm just buying as a crazy person and things that I'm buying for specific kind of collection reasons. So we're going to talk about 3 compendiums, and then we are going to move on to the DC Finest and the Epic collections. So the first compendium is one you've already seen me open the first edition of, which is Ghost. So this is Ghost Compendium Volume 2. Ghost was one of the original heroes from Dark Horse's, what was it called? You guys always have to remind me. World's Greatest Heroes, that they each got a pilot issue and then got launched on their own, and Ghost wound up being by far the longest running of them. So I don't really know a lot about Ghost's collection history. I know that Dark Horse did a number of those small, oh here, look, I have it right here. Those small omnibuses. Whenever you see mention of a Dark Horse omnibus, especially from the 2000s, that is the form factor we're talking about. They're smaller than a standard size trade. This compendium is a standard size trade. Let me get back Fairlady to give you a comparison. So Dark Horse compendiums, standard size. Dark Horse omnibuses, which is how they used to collect Indiana Jones, Star Wars, everything. Anytime you see Dark Horse omnibus, they're tiny. So the question I was left with is, I really didn't know Ghost's publishing history that well. I do want to do a guide to it, but I just knew I liked the character, and so I kind of was like, well, what does this collect? So as I looked into it, this wraps up collecting everything that were in those old Dark Horse omnibuses. There were a total of 5. This gets everything in those. Then it continues into trade paperbacks of kind of a pretty fresh Ghost run. This goes all the way until I think 2015. And actually, and I didn't even know this when I was ordering it. I was just ordering it because I like Ghost as the character, and I've always wanted an easy way to collect all of her stuff at once. As we get into that 2015 series, some of it is by Kelly Sue DeConnick, who I absolutely am obsessed with. In addition, this does have a few anthology stories that were not comprehensively collected in those original omnibuses. So at this point, if you are interested in Ghost, it has a lot of great art. It has Adam Hughes covers. It has, I'm trying to think, I mean, I would have to go through the whole thing to tell you the creators issue by issue. I did not make notes on that. But now I pretty much have all of Ghost. They have brought her back a few times after that 2015 series, but not really substantially. So if you have these 2 compendiums, that's it. I really thought there was going to be, Ryan Benjamin did some of the line art. I really thought that there was, that looks really familiar. Is it Big Quiz Etherly? Hold on, I have to see who this is. Phil Noto. Kelly Sue DeConnick, Phil Noto, and colors from Lee Luffridge. That is quite a pedigree. So I really, really thought that there was going to be a 3rd book, because I hadn't looked too deeply into what this one contained. And then once I realized it contained that, I'm like, oh great, now I have all of Ghost in 2 compendiums. They're standard comic book size, and I can like sit down and finally read all of it, which I've always wanted to. So now you don't have to worry about those old omnibuses anymore, and I don't think there would be a 3rd compendium, because they would need to generate a lot more material to have a 3rd compendium. I have the first Ghost compendium. I still need to read it. Probably not buying second. Hey, and it's powerful to know something is not for you and you are not going to continue. Noah pointing out that they have those Ghost compendiums on Global Comics for those wanting to try. And hello to Novarg and his character L. Okay. Next is this Tom Strong, and it's actually Tom Strong Compendium 2. I had lost hope because I wasn't into compendiums when the first one came out, and it quickly sold out. So I was like, oh, I'm never going to get a chance. And then DC announced for later this year in November a reprint of the first one, so I said, let me grab this one while I can. Here's what this collects. It's not just Tom Strong, it's actually all stuff to the side of Tom Strong. So the way that DC divided it is the Alan Moore Tom Strong series and just Tom Strong series itself are in Compendium Volume 1, and this basically has all of the supporting material. It's a lot of it written by Alan Moore. It's also written by Steve Moore, Peter Hogan, and Liam Moore, and then there are just tons and tons and tons of artists, Chris Sprouse being among some of the most prominent there. But what this collects is it collects Tom Strong's Terrific Tales 1 through 12, Tom Strong and the Robots of Doom 1 through 6, Tom Strong and the Planet of Peril 1 through 6, and the Many Worlds of Tesla Strong 1, plus supplemental material from a ton of America's Best Comics ABC specials. So looking into how this was collected previously, it was really scattered all over the place. You can mostly get the Terrific Tales in 2 books, a Tom Strong's Terrific Tales Book 1 and Book 2, but they were released by DC pre-Flashpoint, so they are pretty old at this point. Tom Strong and the Planet of Peril had its own trade paperback. Some of those America's Best Comics one-shots had their own paperbacks, but this is by far the version of this that you want. I mean, not only does it include some things that had not been collected elsewhere, but is the first time that it has ever fully and completely collected in a coherent way, all in one place. So if you're interested in Tom Strong, and the great thing is, you know, Alan Moore does lots of weird stuff, but this is kind of like Alan Moore kind of doing his most wholesome version of a Superman, Shazam-y, big beefy guy character. So this is kind of like Alan Moore playing it as straight as he ever plays it. And I've only read a little bit of the original Tom Strong, just for context, I think, to talk about. That's really the case with me in a lot of things. I never like to just mention or talk about something that I have no knowledge of. And so as a result, I'll sometimes just read a couple of issues of something, especially if I'm working on a guide or even thinking about doing a guide for it. And then I don't read more because I'm like waiting to have it all in one format. So I probably won't touch that until we get to November when I could get the first compendium, because I'm certainly not going to buy the first compendium at like inflated prices. So that's 2 compendiums, and this third compendium will bridge us through to DC stuff, and this is actually pretty exciting. So this is Nightwing Compendium 3. DC has kept up a yearly pace on their Nightwing compendiums, 3 years, 3 compendiums, and this one is particularly exciting. So all of the compendiums put all of Nightwing stuff in order, which means it collects a lot of one-shots and things that weren't necessarily coherently collected before, but there was an ongoing line of Nightwing trades. They started in, I want to say, 2014. I'm going to bring up my Nightwing guide real quick, which is actually a patrons only guide, and take a look at Nightwing solo. So Nightwing, yeah, it was a 2014 trade paperback series that collected 1 to 70 and was primarily concerned with collecting the series as was written by Chuck Dixon. But this book actually collects Nightwing 60 to 82. So this crosses over to when Devin, I want to say her name is Grayson, right? Isn't that like the joke that Devin Grayson is writing Dick Grayson? This crosses over, some pages, you sometimes get this in a book, some pages just didn't quite get sliced all the way because they were on the same press sheet as each other. And you want to really carefully separate them, probably a little bit more carefully. Yeah, Devin Grayson. And so this extends to Devin Grayson's run. Here's the thing. Devin Grayson's run did not start getting full trade paperback coverage until issue 101, which means there is tons of stuff in here that, not tons, but like a year of stuff in here that has never been collected before in any kind of coherent format. So this is new for DC. I feel like usually DC compendiums so far, no, that's not true. DC compendiums like the Lobo compendium, a lot of that wasn't collected. But so far in Nightwing, it's been mostly things that have been collected with 1 or 2 kind of extra issues thrown in. This, we're now getting into unexplored territory. And these books continue to collect about 20 some individual issues of Nightwing, and then throwing in all of the kind of tie-ins and one-shots and crossovers in that period. So we're still looking at a lot more Nightwing to get to the end. This series runs all the way into issue 153 before he goes away to take over as Batman. However, as we get deeper into that stuff, there's less kind of like one-shots and OGNs and things happening. So I think we'll probably get to closer to 30 issues of Nightwing per compendium as we go through the rest of it in compendium. So probably, maybe we could do it in 2 more. The next one could take us let's see, this one gets to 82. So maybe the next one takes us to like around, let's see, where do the trades break off? 111 with a few extra things thrown in. And then the next one, could it get from 112 to 153? No, that's too big. That's 40 plus. So maybe we will need 3 more compendiums. But I think that's pretty exciting. And it really shows that like DC is really committed to this format. And I think actually I understand now why it's in this format rather than being in DC Finest, because to get to this point that we were going to be able to collect so much stuff that was uncollected, the DC Finest would take a really long time. And I think with compendiums, I'm starting to see the vision a little bit of why they chose compendiums over Finest for some runs, because they're like, if we do it in compendium, we're going to be able to get it out way, way quicker and cover everything for people who've always just wanted it. And it's going to be affordable and cheap for them. And it's for characters that DC's not sure could really sell that well in Omnibus. So could they have knocked out all of Nightwing and probably 4 omnibuses? Probably. But would they have sold well if they could knock it out in 5 compendiums at a much cheaper price and get it all covered? Then they have the optionality in the future to do it in Omnibus. And I think that that is actually pretty smart. So, Rodimus Prime saying, got caught up and heard the possible podcast is coming. If that's true, I will love hearing Krisis talk for hours about comics and other topics, and there will be some other topics included. John678 saying, DC killing the Compendium game, hoping they do more. NZ Hawkster Kieron, my friend, saying, picked up my copy of Compendium 3 last week. Absolutely loved the first 2 volumes. Sasmurf saying, the other Compendium series, I'm getting our Green Lantern, which I feel is the best way to get that era of Green Lantern. I agree, because it's the best mapping. Xbox by Degree saying that Nightwing Volume 3 is really good. I read it as soon as it came out. Oh my gosh, you read it already? They better do Volume 4 with the way that it ended. I don't know which Devin Grayson issue is controversial, so I don't know if it has that one. I'll be mad if they release Nightwing in omnibus form after all these compendiums. Well, I think it will eventually happen, but for DC, because they haven't done that much in oversized from the 80s and 90s, they need to spend some time making sure all of that art is omnibus ready. I know it doesn't feel like omnibuses are that much bigger than standard collections, but they actually have to do a lot of restoring to make sure that things are going to look right in omnibus, and Marvel does not always put in the work, and sometimes we get crappy looking stuff from them in omnibus. So I enjoy that DC is putting in the work, and I think what they're doing is testing the waters with the compendiums and also just making the stuff available so we don't have to wait years and years for it to be an omnibus, and then if there's interest, they will do an omnibus. Samantha saying, I need to get those Nightwing compendiums. I actually really loved the start of Devin Grayson's run until that moment. Ooh, I don't know what that moment is. You're all talking about it. All right, that's it for compendiums, which means we are now into DC Finest. So I have quite a stack of DC Finest here. They're all the DC Finest that came out across the last couple weeks. I'm going to move my keyboard because we're not really using that all that much. And I have a lot of notes that I took on these because I want to start making these haul videos, again, to not just make them ostentatious displays of omnibus wealth. I want to start talking about what things collect, because sometimes I haven't read them yet, especially when it comes to DC Finest. I've often not read them yet, but I want to talk about why they exist, if you should buy them, how they might be different than things that have been collected before. So I want to kind of give you a little peek into my brain about how I think about these things and how Crushing Krisis guides really work. So our first one that we have today is DC Finest. This is Batman, A Death in the Family. Now, this is extremely, extremely popular Batman material. It's been collected again and again and again. I love how this black cover is just flat black and it continues right into the trade dress. That is really, really enjoyable. And of course, this is the spoilers, but you can see it right there on the cover. The death of Jason Todd. Now, the thing to know about Batman post-Crisis, that's where we are right now, this is in 1988, is that Batman post-Crisis has been collected in a variety of ways, never quite as pleasing and as continuous as these DC Finest. They used to do 2 separate lines of Batman hardcover standard size collections, one for Detective Comics, one for Batman itself, and they would only intersect when there was an intersection in the plot. So it was fine to collect them because they had different creative teams, but it was not super, super satisfying because it was kind of like Batman was written to be threaded together. Now, this story, of course, in particular, A Death in the Family, has been collected a million times over because it's one of the most popular and well-known Batman stories of all time. So you would have no trouble finding it. So the question is, if you've got that Batman shelf already, is there a really competitive reason to have this? Hello, D. Marcel. Thank you for attending. We're psyched to see you. And Scott, we're psyched for the DC Finest poll tomorrow. I'll talk about that more in a second. The thing that's unique about this is it collects Batman the Cult 1 through 4. And that is a miniseries that has been collected separately as its own 1 through 4. I forget if it's a trade paperback or a hardcover. It's covered in my Batman guide, and it's of course like on things like League of Geeks. But that has never been collected in line with this other Batman material. It has always been separate. And so that is the thing that this DC Finest line is like really doing that makes it unique and interesting, is if you don't want to track down all of those Batman things individually, if you just want everything that was in continuity and Batman all at once in all one book, that is what DC Finest is offering to you. So there is a reason to buy it, even if you maybe already had it in the past. And also there's certainly a reason to buy it just now, because this is really legendary stories. The Death in the Family story is totally insane. Joker goes to be the Iranian ambassador to the UN. So he actually has political power. I mean, it is a crazy story. How you get to that and then how you get from that to the death of Jason Todd is absolutely wild. But it's a story worth reading. I'm past this far in Batman, so I've read all of that Batman just digitally on DC Universe, and I really like it. It's one of my big reading projects. Yeah, the Cult got an OHC last year, really nice, but again, never collected, kind of threaded in with the rest of Batman. Cody's talking about something. Nicolasa saying, I decided to go the finest route for Batman in the Bronze Age until Nightfall. I'm in love with that format. Lance saying, Batman is collected in finest how I wanted it to be collected for years. It's finally so great to read them that way. So a couple of thoughts there that I said that I would get to. First of all, I'm not deliberately ignoring some of your questions in chat, but because I have so many haul books to get through, and because I want this to be haul focused in the future, if people want to learn about these books, if you have questions not directly about the haul, that is for the after show. This is not going to be a super long show, so we'll have plenty of time to talk an after show. The link is in the description if you're watching live, so you can just open that window to the side, and as you think of these other questions for me, questions about New Zealand, questions about how I feel about James Tynion, all this other stuff, you can just put them in the chat there, and I'll answer them all in the after show. Because I want to talk to all of you. It means so much to me that you're all here, but like at a point I have to do the show that was planned, and so that's what the after show is for, because we know some of those topics can take me far afield. The other thing is the DC Finest poll. So I have been working all weekend. It's one of the reasons I did not do the DC Fantasy draft for us today, because tomorrow in Your Mint Condition, we're launching the first annual DC Finest poll. This is different than Tiger Eyes polls in a couple of ways. It's not really about mapping at all. It's about what gaps you want filled. So for something like Batman, we've gotten so many books sequentially from Red Skies all the way through A Death in the Family. So the question for Batman is going to be, do you want the gap that's before Red Skies to be next? Do you want the gap that's after Death in the Family to be next? Do you want to continue the Golden Age? If we look at all of the finest books on the shelf, all of the finest lines have gaps either before, in the middle, or after them, because no finest line is totally complete yet. All of them, I think, except for maybe Peacemaker, all of them could at least have at least one more book. And some of them just have one book, like Hawkman. And that Hawkman book is just Silver Age Hawkman from the beginning. So really, there's only a before and an after. Before is, do you want Golden Age Hawkman? After is, do you want more Silver Age, and then Bronze Age, and then 80s? But then you have to start breaking it up a little bit, because that's a lot of Hawkman to talk about. And just saying, I want something after that is way too broad. So we broke it up into, do you want Silver and Bronze Hawkman? Do you want Jenny Blake Isabella Hawkman? Do you want Hawkworld and Ostrander Hawkman? Or do you want Jeff Johns 2000s Hawkman? So that's kind of like 4 broad categories, and that's what we did for every single line. So this is based on the research that I've already done with Charlie Pote and Joey Hines to create the DC Finest mapping sheet, which we track every single DC Finest that comes out, and then the way future volumes could be mapped around them. I also worked with Dom of X to make sure everything was fully covered, because you know he reads and very carefully every Finest as it comes out. And then we submitted that entire list directly to the DC Collected Editions department. And while they did not give us spoilers or maps, they gave us a lot of really great advice of like, ooh, the way we think about that is it actually breaks here. Or like, oh, that's so interesting, but actually that era would have a lot more content than you thought, because it also includes this other thing. And that's only half of the poll. The other half of the poll, which again came from the research that Joey and Charlie and I have done, is every line that could be a DC Finest line. And we also submitted that list to DC, and DC went through and had some really interesting comments about like, ooh, we hadn't thought of that, which was cool to hear. Or like, oh, actually we have thought about that. That's never going to happen. And here's why, because it's part of another line, because it's combined with this other thing, because you don't realize it, but we've already started collecting it elsewhere. So the poll tomorrow is going to be all of the gaps between existing DC Finest, and then all of the lines that could become DC Finest. And it's not like a Tiger Eyes poll for Marvel or DC where it's kind of like speculative. This got DC to basically say, yeah, broadly, that's how we think about it. So it's not endorsed by DC. It doesn't confirm DC's publishing plans, but we wanted to do a poll because Finest is so new and it's so special and there's a chance to get it so right. We really wanted to do a poll that DC could actually look at the data and make decisions with it if they want to. And that's the poll that we're doing tomorrow. It has taken so much work, but it's built in such a better way than any other poll that we've built. And hopefully you can really hear the excitement in my face here because hear it in my face. That's Can you hear the excitement in my face? Can you hear it in my face tonight? Because I just think it's so cool and I cannot wait for everybody to get their chance to voice their opinion on it. And Dom built some frigging awesome slides. It's not going to be like Tiger Eyes where you're like, I don't know what to vote for. I don't understand what's in them. When you see the way that Dom has visually presented the information, you will understand exactly what you're voting for. So, which brings us to this. This is Superman Time and Time Again. This is Superman in 1990 and 1991. And there's absolutely no surprises of any kind of what's in this because this has, starting right in the middle, I opened right to it. How about that? Oh no, but it's Triangle 1991. Number 1. So we're into Triangle era Superman here, which means this is already in Omnibus. And it actually starts just ahead of Triangle with Krisis with a K. Not often that I get to see that in a printed book, although it's not the reason I'm called this, but Krisis in Crimson Kryptonite, which is the sequential story that happened just before Triangle started. So this pretty much is aligned, I want to say, with Triangle Omnibus number 1. But the point is that there's nothing, unlike the Batman book, there is nothing special about this in terms of the order that the issues are in or like anything that's being added to this. This is very, very exactly following the Omnibus map to the best of my knowledge of these issues, which is fine and makes sense because Superman was explicitly in an order at that time. That was what the joy of the triangles were. And that order has been duplicated. So here I'm trying to, sorry, I know I'm not making eye contact with you, which makes it look like I'm avoiding you. Yeah, that is actually, I did open on the first try. That is actually the first Triangle issue. I don't know why I second guessed myself. So really excited for that. I decided I'm not doing oversized Superman. I do love a lot of Superman, especially 90s Superman. It's so tempting because again, I love completely mapped things, but I am not doing the full Superman Triangle Omnibus. I'm not doing it. I resisted the death of Superman Omnibus all these years, and I'm not bringing those all into my house, but I'm happy to get them in Finest. LSE Dari saying Finest like epics. And for all intents and purposes, yes. I mean, I'm trying to think of any. The only way they're different than epics is that DC's already said they're definitely going through 2011, which Marvel kind of was coy about like where their epic line is going to end or whatever. And DC is being really upfront right now about like what each one will contain and how they've planned it. Whereas Marvel at the beginning hadn't put as much thought into that. And so you can see, and especially early Fantastic Four, they made mistakes. Like there are things that should be in the Fantastic Four epics that aren't. And now they'd have to go and put out like a companion edition because they can't remap the whole epic collection because it's so many things have happened sequentially on either side. DC has been so rigorous in the way that they're going through all these DC Finest. I'm sure there's going to be a mistake here and there. It's just the nature of the medium. There's so many comics about so many characters to try to think through and conclude what is the best story to tell here. But Finests are basically epics with maybe a little bit more intent. And also epics generally do not collect across a line except for the X-Men ones once X-Men 1991 starts. Like Spider-Man is just Amazing Spider-Man. Punisher is just the main Punisher series. DC Finest seem to be happy to collect across a line if there are multiple titles in that line, considering it started out with Batman and right off the bat Batman did that. So then we'll see in the future if Green Lantern's going to do that, if what are some other multi-book titles at DC, if Justice League is going to do that, but signs seem to be pointing to yes. Will I be pulling post-Flashpoint stuff in the poll? No, because that's the rules of DC Finest. The poll is very much playing by the rules of DC Finest because we want the data to represent what DC's actual plans are. Might they plan past Flashpoint in the future? Yes, and then we will add that to the poll. But the reason the consultation with DC was important was not that it's exact. We don't know what their maps are. We don't know what the volumes are going to be titled. That's not what it was about. It was about like, is this actually in your plan in such a way that we should include it in the data? And that came out with a few surprises, which you will find out tomorrow. I cannot spoil them, but no Flashpoint. Or another one that I think is like pretty. I don't think I'm spoiling anything to say that all of them have been focused on in continuity characters before, nothing creator owned at Vertigo. So like Sweet Tooth at this time does not appear to be in consideration for DC Finest because it's not DC continuity. It's not a character that intersects with DC. It continues past the 2011 dividing line. And so I think that that's a thing that I kind of intuited and then DC confirmed. So Triangle Superman, for those of you who don't know, it's the only comic book that's ever really successfully done this for the long term. There were 3 Superman titles, shortly thereafter 4, and this was about 4 years after Superman had relaunched after Krisis in 1987. And it had gotten to the point that the titles had very specific continuity to each other, and you kind of needed to know what order they were happening in every month, because they were 4 books, 3 books, then 4 books, all with Superman. Spider-Man had that too, and Spider-Man's crap at organizing at that point. And so DC, starting in 1991, started putting a triangle on the cover that had the year and then the reading number in the year of that issue. And they did it for every issue for a whole decade. So every year you would have numbered every issue, and no matter what Superman issue you got, it would say the year and the number, so you knew what order to put them in. DC only ever made mistakes on it, like once or twice, which in itself is an amazing editorial feat. The one thing is that they did not include if there were like Superman one-shots or miniseries, and they didn't put them on annuals. So there is some stuff that you still have to like sit down and figure out where it goes, but it made making the Superman guides on my site really fun, because a lot of the time I just had to open up all the covers and they kind of told me what the order was, and then I could just focus on explaining like what chunks of story we're telling in what order. So Triangle era goes from 1991. Some people include pretty much everything from after John Byrne as if it's Triangle, which is actually around where that DC Finest starts, but Triangle itself, as we saw, starts in 1991, and Triangle continues, I want to say, to the mid or end 2001, or maybe even the beginning of 2002. So it is a solid era. Can I say how many votes you will get? We're still quibbling over one of the votes. You will get 5 votes on lines, new lines, because mathematically it makes sense. When you see how many new lines we've researched, 5 is the right number. We're still nailing down what you're going to get a vote for on books. But again, the books are not every individual epic volume the way that it is on any of the Tigerized polls or the reprint polls. They're about eras or groups of books. And so we have to kind of, we can't give too many votes, because A, the poll then gets hard to vote on, but B, it kind of puts too many points in the system. X by Degrees talking about DC Finest Western, which is the next thing I have in my pile. So I had to do some research on this to understand how to describe it to you. This is DC Finest Western, The Hangman Never Loses. Now, the thing that everybody is going to know from this, and probably be the most interested in this, is Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex makes his first appearance during the run of, sorry, I'm just looking down at my notes here, All-Star Western. And things that Jonah Hex has appeared in have been collected before. He has 2 showcase volumes. He has had color volumes as well. Like, this initial area of Jonah Hex has been collected. However, the Western line before this was not just Jonah Hex. Pretty much after Jonah Hex first appears, other DC Western titles kind of start to tail off a little bit, and it becomes sort of all about that, but that is not the case at this point. So this starts at the beginning of All-Star Western, which is often not collected because it doesn't have Jonah Hex, and it also is collecting issues of Tomahawk. It collects 11 issues of Tomahawk, which have never been collected in full before. So this is an example where there could be tons of stuff before this, because DC has such a rich history of Western comic books in their golden and silver ages. This starts in 1970, so this is pretty much the beginning of the Bronze Age. At DC, sometimes you could say Bronze Age started in 68 or 69, but it's kind of easy to just say that this is a Bronze Age book. And then continuing from this, although it would pick up a little bit more Tomahawk, eventually all of those other Western titles kind of die out, and you just have Jonah Hex. And so this Western line seems like it is going to be the same thing as saying Jonah Hex line, because Jonah Hex kind of is the headliner of Western. What will be interesting to me is to see if DC actually is right now thinking about it all as Western, but at a point when he graduates into his own title, which doesn't happen, I don't think, until the 80s, I want to say. Maybe then they rename it Jonah Hex, but it's like pretty much the same line, but for marketing purposes, you know, it says Jonah Hex on the spine. I don't know. But what I do know right now is there's a lot to collect before this, and there's a lot to collect after this. And it's really, really cool to, like, again, this is collecting comics for the first time in color, and some of them for the first time in general. that have never been collected before, which is amazing. And it's amazing that this line can do that. So if you're open to reading some early Jonah Hex, or if you're open to reading some Western comic books, you can pick that up. Hext was, of course, the most popular character. Richard B is saying, I want to get some of these genre runs like science fiction with a bunch of ape comics. Looks very fun. Rodimus Prime has never read Jonah Hex. Is it worth the buy? For me, I don't love Western comics, and I always thought because his last name is Hex that it was going to be a little spookier, and apparently it's not that spooky. So it's not high on my reading list, but I want to be able to make a Jonah Hex guide, and I don't own anything physical Jonah Hex, and so having that for me is helpful. I don't know if just as a reader you're going to want it. And I keep seeing this hashtag #TrashCanFam, and I don't know what it means. Is this a youth thing? Are you youths? Is that why you're saying it? Somebody's got to explain to me. Okay, this is an easy finest to talk about. It is Justice League of America, Starro the Conqueror. This is the beginning of Justice League. It has Brave and the Bold 28 through 30, which is their debut, and then it collects Justice League of America 1 through 19 and Mystery in Space 75, in which they guest appear with Adam Strange. This is exactly as Justice League has been collected in other formats, archives, Silver Age trades, Omnibus. There's nothing special about the order that this is in. This is exactly as we've had it elsewhere because Justice League is well collected. What's interesting here is Justice League has actually skipped around twice already, which is pretty funny. So the other one that we have has issue 45 in it, and this ends with issue 19. So there's actually a single gap volume between this one and that one that'll have 20 to 44. So on the poll, that is an example on the poll of something that it will say a single volume of Justice League, because it's not really an era or a range of years. It is a specific book. I love the kookiness of early Justice League. For me, pour moi, I think the thing is that it's not, I mean, it's in continuity and those adventures do later get referenced, but it's not like Avengers. If you've read Silver Age Avengers, like Silver Age Avengers starts with heavy stuff, like, you know, major villains that we're going to see again, especially as we get into the Roy Thomas Avengers, like after we get into the 20s and 30s and 40s and changes from Stan Lee to Roy Thomas. Avengers is a lasting book. I don't know that you could say the same thing for Justice League. Some of it is just frivolous. And then, of course, once a year, they do have their Crisis on Multiple Earths crossovers with the JSA. So I can't say that it has a high pedigree as Marvel Silver Age. It's a bit sillier. Apparently, Trashcan Fam is a Chubby Ray thing. Max with the explainer, Trashcan Fam is Chubby Ray, I believe the king of youths. I hear he owns a faux leather jacket and is part of a barbershop quartet. I love barbershop quartets. Okay, 3 more here. Let's talk about Sergeant Rock. Crazy to have this in finest. I mean, DC, they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to go in so hard on war, science fiction, Western. I mean, nobody would have known that we were missing these things and that they were possible. But DC is really making a point of showing that it is possible. Now, what's really interesting, they already have a war book, and this is not just war. This is Sergeant Rock. So this is going to just follow Sergeant Rock as he is developed. Now, this has been in Showcase. He also had archives. And so there were several archives and there were 2 showcases. Showcases were DC's black and white format, like Marvel Essentials. Archives were DC's hardcover color format, like Marvel Masterworks. I just say that because I feel like people know the Marvel format's better. What's really interesting about this is 616 pages, the Marvel magic number, which means this is actually longer than his first showcase. So we're already into the second showcase here, and the archive line only collected through issue 139, and this is already at 122. So assuming that books DC finest books usually are like 20 to 30 issues, and if the stories are shorter because there were backup matter, sometimes you get more than that. I mean, this has Our Army at War 81 to 122, so that's over 40 issues, but that's because these were just the A stories. That means that as soon as we get a second volume of this, we are going to be farther in color than we ever got in color before. And also, let's see, in black and white, it's going to take probably 2 before we get farther than we've been before. But this line very quickly could exceed everything we've had of Sergeant Rock previously. Now, this is a real war book, much like Sergeant Fury was before he got retroactively made a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, I guess he was retroactively made Sergeant Fury. He was already in S.H.I.E.L.D. Anyway, so there's nothing super about this. You have to be into war stories. Some of it has quite a pedigree because it has a lot of Joe Kubert art in it, which is what a lot of people know it for. All stories written by Robert Knier and illustrated by Joe Kubert. So if you want to see classic Joe Kubert art, I think that's probably the draw on this, as much as the fact that it's war stories. And if you are not a big war stories reader, the great thing is you don't have to buy the whole DC Finest line. You don't have to. Nobody's going to make you. So if you don't like war stories, I don't think you need that one. But Saz Murph is really excited that it is being collected. And Richard B. saying surprised he's getting his own line separate from War. Pretty cool, though. Sergeant Rock has his own action figure line in the 1980s. We only have 2 more Finest, and then we're going to knock through some epics, and then we're going to be done. So make sure you do have the URL of the after show. All right, let's see. Let's talk about one more bronze, and then we'll talk about a new one. This is Joker, the last ha-ha-ha. Or just 2 ha's, the last ha-ha. Now, there is a Joker Bronze Age Omnibus, and this is the same as the Omnibus, except, unlike the Sergeant Rock compared to the Showcase, this is 562 pages, which is about 150 pages short of the Omnibus. So this ends in 1981. The Omnibus continues pretty much to pre-Krisis. So I do think there will be at least one more book after this, because there's clearly stuff in the Omnibus that's Joker related, and it will probably collect some of the big Joker stories from the beginning of post-Krisis in there as well. It just would have to. The thing is, I think this is probably the one volume you're going to want, because what makes this volume special is that it has all of Joker's series 1 through 10 in it. And this, so that's specific to Joker. I don't think it's going to be collected in the Batman line. And since they put it in this book, I doubt that they're going to put it in Batman Family either. So I think this is your chance to get them all in Finest. And what's significant is that Joker number 10 was never originally published. I believe they finished it for the Omnibus, and it is presented here as well. So as far as I know, and look who's on the cover. Oh yeah, it's Joker versus the Justice League. And that includes Wonder Woman. I am so into that. And so that was finished especially for, I want to say, the Omnibus. And here's your chance to have it in paperback. So that is pretty cool. Pretty cool. So again, even if you're not going to go all in on this Joker line, I think this is probably the one to get, because it has Joker 1 through 10 in it. And then anything else in the Joker line is probably mostly going to be duplicative of the Batman line. So, the more of a Joker line would be a double dip. I think personally, and I don't have any insider knowledge from DC on this, but I do know what's on the poll. I think they'll do one before this that has his kind of greatest hits from the Golden and Silver Age. And I think they'll do one after this to get us into the beginning of the post-Krisis, and I think that'll be it, because again, anything after that will just be double dip. But the cool thing about double dipping for Joker is if you happen to like Joker, his stories tend to be really significant stories because he's like the Batman villain. So it is kind of satisfying to just read the condensed only Joker stuff. I think if you did that for a lot of Batman villains, if you did it for Clayface, if you did it for Riddler, then it would just feel like a kind of egregious double dip. But I think because Joker is Joker, it kind of feels worthwhile to get them all into one book. Okay, here's the final one, and of course it's one I'm very excited about, is Wonder Woman. It is Dawn Before Darkness, and this is the second half of Gail Simone's run on Wonder Woman. It has the same cover as the Gail Simone Wonder Woman Omnibus. So if you have the Gail Simone Wonder Woman Omnibus, you're saying, do I care? Well, I looked into it, and this does have a few things that distinguishes it from the Omnibus. And I don't know that it's enough to double dip, but it might be enough to help you decide which one you want. So the Gail Simone Omnibus only collects Gail Simone stuff. This has 2 things the Omnibus doesn't have. It has Wonder Woman Blackest Night 1 through 3. It's actually written by Greg Rucka. And so it is in the Rucka Omnibus, but the Rucka Omnibus comes before the Simone Omnibus by quite a bit. And so those are much later issues, and you won't be reading them in reading order if you read just an Omnibus. This has them happening right before Wonder Woman 40, which is right around where they came out. The Blackest Night issues came out from February 2010 to April 2010, and this has them right before Wonder Woman 40, which was in March 2010. But then the other thing that this has is it has 4 of the stories from Wonder Woman 600, not all of which were written by Gail Simone. It kind of stops in the middle of Wonder Woman 600 because some of the stories in Wonder Woman 600 are written by J. Michael Straczynski, and they would be in the next book, because the next book will collect J. Michael Straczynski. But for the example, there is this 2-page story by Jeff Jones that was from Wonder Woman 600. Sorry if I said 60 a couple times there. And actually, maybe it's just a 1-page story. just a pinup with some words apparently. And that is here. Oh no, that's the final page of a brief story, I guess. Yeah. And then also it has this 1-page write-up by Linda Carter. So it basically splits issue 600 in half, and the other half of it will be in the next book. Again, this is on the poll. There will be only one more volume to vote for after this. So it'll say Wonder Woman final DC Finest volume, because it's the last volume before Flashpoint. I think this might be one of the only series that's at that point. And it would collect Wonder Woman the remainder of 600, 601 through 614, and then probably other stuff that happened in that period. Again, it's not a mapping poll, so we're not going to say all that in the poll. It's just going to say, it's really clever the way that we built it. It'll say Wonder Woman final DC Finest volume, and then in parentheses it'll have the years, which will be 2010 to 2011, and then it'll say like one volume after Dawn Before Darkness. So there's a lot of really helpful wayfinding information, because with Finest, unlike with Omnibus, they're always part of like a chain of things. Okay, chain of books. Okay, we're gonna do some Marvel Epics right now, but I have a couple things that keep dropping that I want to show you first, and then we'll do epics. So this actually came with that D&D book we were looking at earlier. I don't like when books just send you random toys, because what am I supposed to do with this? I only play D&D digitally, so I don't need figures. I mean, he's very cool, but I just am like, it's one more thing for me to keep, and it's like not like there's a huge market for figures in New Zealand necessarily, so I don't want to just throw it away. I guess I should just like donate it to like a game store or something. I don't know. But it always annoys me when there's like extra random nonsense. I'm like, I didn't ask for this. Okay. Also, I recently got this, one of my favorite movies of all time, Josie and the Pussycats, on Blu-ray. If you've never seen this movie, it's from a comic book. Hey, thematic. But it's not, I mean, it is a comic book movie technically, but it's like a farce. It's a parody of pop culture. It's a parody of early 2000s media. It's a parody of like Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Sync and Total Request Live. It's a parody of like bands that are kind of assembled for you, like the Spice Girls. It's heavily a parody of the Spice Girls in a way, and has amazing music. So all the music is written and performed by, a lot of it is produced by Babyface, if you're from the 90s and you know Babyface. But it's sung by this woman, I want to say Kay Hanley is the name. I just want to make sure I have it right, because I actually love her. And yes, Kay Hanley. And I have actually almost everything she's ever recorded. Kay Hanley was the lead singer of Letters to Cleo in the 1990s. A band that I really liked. They had the song Here and Now, that the chorus was so fast. It went here and now, and then the chorus was like no, but she sang real words. Nobody, and this is before the internet had lyrics, nobody knew the lyrics. It was like if somebody in your class could figure out half the lyrics, that was a big deal. So Kay Hanley does all the singing, although it's Rachel Lee Cook that is actually playing her, and the voice matches so perfectly, like you really believe. The songs are so good. Like as power pop songs, I probably could sing this front to back. It's incredibly good songs. The movie is genuinely hilarious. We've showed it to people of all ages, all family members of all generations. Everybody finds it funny. If you've never seen it, it is a cult classic. It looks fine on DVD. I've had it on DVD for years, but we just recently watched it and I was like, oh, I love this so much. And I was like, oh, you know, I would love to have a Blu-ray of it. So I picked up the Blu-ray. There's so many good songs, and they're all original songs except for the actual Josie and the Pussycats. Josie and the Pussycats, long tails and ears for hats, but was the original theme song of the cartoon back from the 60s, I want to say. But yeah, the original music is really great. If you like that kind of like power pop, it's funny, I've been trying to find other stuff that sounds like this, and it's such a clean pop rock sound that's guitar forward that there's not a lot of other music that sounds a lot like it. To me, it sounds kind of like Veruca Salt, but Veruca Salt was a little bit like harder and messier. I think it also sounds a lot like the Veronicas. I think if you're Australian, I think the Veronicas is probably one of the closest analogs to that. And of course, I think the Veronicas came out a little bit after this, but as somebody who loves female singers and women in rock, this like, you know what else? It sounds kind of like Biff Naked for the Canadians in the chat. So I just love it. I wish there could have been like 20 albums of this, and Kay Hanley's stuff is incredible. She's an incredible singer, but it doesn't ever sound quite as clean and crunchy as this. Love the music. Yeah, you know the music of Good as Babyface was involved. And also, I was trying to think of this and it wasn't coming to me, Scott Denham, that Adam Schlesinger also wrote on music from this as well. And of course, I want to say he's the co-founder of Fountains of Wayne and also a band that I really love, Ivy. Am I making that up? Adam Schlesinger. No, Schlesinger. Oh gosh, I can't spell his damn name. There we go. Yeah, I want to say that he also, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago, but he was also had a band called Ivy with this French singer that I love, love, love. I have all of their records. The singer is Dominique Durand. And so I've always loved Ivy, and then I always have loved Josie and the Pussycats. And then I kind of was like, oh, Adam Schlesinger, Fountains of Wayne, because Trixie Mattel, another one of my favorite artists, a drag queen, but also a great songwriter, is a massive, massive Adam Schlesinger fan, and she purposely writes to sound like his stuff. And so that kind of like all kind of came together for me. So let me take a sip. All right, the other cool thing I have to show off. Oh my gosh, this is a little heavier than I can do with my arm right now. I'm going to open this, and you're going to be like, I cannot believe you're opening this on stream, but I love this so much. So the great thing about tabletop games, TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, is that D&D sort of has had the market cornered for a long, long time, but D&D is not the only player in town. And D&D is very crunchy, meaning it's got a lot of numbers, it's got a lot of math. In the world of tabletop RPGs, things that are very mathy are often called crunchy, meaning like there's a lot of numbers to crunch. I just put that together for the first time. So that's great, and it's fun. And at the point that you've played D&D for a while, it all kind of just makes sense. Like, I don't even need a book in front of me to do... I mean, I need it to refer to the spells and stuff, but I just know how the numbers work at this point. It's just innate. But there's so many other kinds of tabletop RPGs. There's Vampire the Masquerade, which has very little crunch and is mostly about roleplay. There's Pathfinder, which is even crunchier. It's basically like a takeoff of an old, crunchier version of D&D. There's Kieron Gillen's Die, which is very, very confusing to try to run, but it's meant to really focus on the narrative of the characters, and all of their powers are directly in support of their narrative. There's so many different... There's one called Kids on Bikes, which is really, really cool, and you can see people play them in live plays all around the web. I'm a huge fan of Dimension 20, mostly DM'd by Brendan Lee Mulligan and Abria Iyengar on Dropout, but this is called Household. It was originally in Italian, and it is a D&D. It's not a D&D. They converted it to D&D, which I think I've bought, but I don't think that's what this is. And this is volume 2. This is one of the cool... I have volume 1, and it's just like this. It looks how it looks like a book. So it's got a magnetic enclosure. It's so heavy that I'm having trouble holding it up all at once. So it opens up like that, and then the magnetic enclosure continues to open, and it turns out that it's a totally enclosed slipcase. So this is... Ooh, okay, here. Now we've got it empty, so I can show you all of the art. And I have the first volume of this, and I really want to bring it to the table with my friends, and I never got to, so I'm still intent that it's going to happen eventually. And the thing that I love about it is it's about a whole tiny world. It's about little people who live in your garden, and they're like little fae and fairy. And the rules are really different than D&D. They have like a combined dice pool that's all D6s, and they have all these like abilities and things, and all of their abilities and traits are based off of a deck of cards. So they each are organized around what suit that they would be in. I just think it's incredibly, incredibly clever. And, you know, it takes a lot to make a role-playing system. It takes like a lot of organization and a lot of planning, and not every role-playing system makes sense. And so there's a lot of them that you'll pick it up and you start playing it, and you're like, the rules aren't well organized, or like it doesn't answer all the questions, or you're like, how can I get my character to do this thing I want them to do? I often have that experience with Vampire the Masquerade in 5th edition. It's just not that forthcoming. This is beautiful. And it comes with an art book for it as well that shows all of the art that they've developed. It's just really, really cool. I love the people who developed it. I've corresponded with them before on Kickstarter to ask some questions and get some stuff resolved, and they are always really, really easy to talk to and really, really helpful. So, but my thing was I never got to use it with my main D&D party because we always played D&D 5e, and they actually did a D&D 5e conversion of it. So it's like, oh, so then I had to order that too. So now I'm going to have 2 of the exact same thing on the shelf. I probably could have converted it to D&D on my own, but they made like an official rule set that works with D&D 5e. So I'm going to have that twice on my shelf. I'm going to have those 2 beautiful magnetic enclosures. The first one's purple for the main version of them doing their own game. And then I'm going to have 2 that are going to be in D&D 5e, and it's going to be worth every single penny because it's gorgeous, and I will get to run it eventually. I know that I will. Okay, finally we're to Epic Collections. I'm just going to start pulling off the shelf. So this is the Incredible Hulk, Epic Collection number 11, Steveolution. It collects Incredible Hulk 263 to 279, annual 10 and 11, and Incredible Hulk versus Quasimodo. We are deep into, I want to say, the Bill Mantlo run. This is entirely written, almost entirely written by Bill Mantlo. And of course, as we've talked about many times before, that Bill Mantlo, we originally had a set of trades that were called, we always have called pseudo epics, because they were actually the beginning of when Marvel was experimenting with this thick paperback format to collect big swaths of continuous material that was older material that wasn't kind of like omnibus worthy at that time. And then very soon after putting out the few Mantlo trades, they started doing epic collections. So these are recollecting things that were in those trades. So all of this we've had collected already. I'm running out of, there's going to be a big office reorganization coming up because I am running out of places to put this stuff. Okay. We're going to save that one. Okay. The next thing we have is ROM. Epic Collection number 4. This collects ROM 48 to 60. So we're going to get one more because I want to say ROM goes to issue 75. I should know that. I have a ROM guide. And look at that. It has one of those famous issues that has other Marvel Universe players in it. In this case, a familiar group of people, the New Mutants. So this has always been the only way that you can get ROM in collection. They've never included it in any Marvel stuff because ROM is a licensed character and they can't. So ROM goes up to issue 75. As I said, this has 40, I can't quite see that, 48 through 60, and also an issue of Incredible Hulk. Actually, that, does it go in that Incredible Hulk? 296? No, it's in the next one. Yeah, it'll be in the next epic. But something that they've never been able to collect with Incredible Hulk because it has ROM in it. So the next one will have the remainder of this all the way through issue number 75. And this was supposed to originally have annual 3 and 4, but now it just says annual 3. So I guess they moved annual 4. Oh, no. Sorry, I was looking at the omnibuses. Yeah, this was never going to have annual 3 in it. So that will be in the next book. And then we'll have all ROM. And then you can sit down and read it. The thing that I always say for people who aren't familiar with ROM, it's like, yes, he was a toy, but he was a toy that they completely integrated. First of all, it was a low-selling toy. Nobody had the toy. And it was a toy that they completely integrated into the Marvel Universe. So, like, he's having his ROM adventures in the backdrop of the Marvel Universe, and he's the Space Knight, right? He's from a world where to defend the world, I guess I didn't quite say in a world. We're not going to give it to you. But he's from this world where to defend the world, you have to basically take on this organic form of armor and sacrifice kind of your normal life in order to be a Space Knight and defend the world. But instead of being still defending that world, he's here on Earth kind of fending off his traditional villains from infiltrating the Earth. Now, talking about double dips. I don't know that we need multiple Doctor Doom epic collections. I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because he's going to be in a friggin' movie this year. But this collects primarily, I mean, it has Fantastic Four, 84 through 87, 116, 142 through 144. Then it has some Submariner issues. Then it has some Thor issues. Then it has some Incredible Hulk issues. Then it has some Hero for Hire issues. And then finally, material from Astonishing Tales 1 through 8, which is really the only, like, truly unique material in here. It's been collected elsewhere. I think in the, I want to say it's in Marvel Masterworks Rarities, which usually is right here. Did I move it? Oh, here it is. Yeah, so this has that stuff. So it has been collected, but it was only as this pretty obscure volume of Marvel Masterworks Rarities. And this collects those. So if you're somebody who's trying to get all of Marvel's Silver Age and Epic Collection, that's the draw here. But everything else here is double dipped. So that's not ideal. And those Astonishing Tales stories are only 11 pages each because it doesn't collect everything that was happening in Astonishing Tales. So let's see, that's on page 149. So here's the first Astonishing Tales issue, which was Khazar and Doctor Doom. And so that ran for 8 issues. So that's really the only thing that you're buying this for unique. Now, again, if you're a big Doctor Doom fan, like being a Joker fan, and you want all this stuff in one place, this is cool because it crosses how many lines? Fantastic Four, Submariner, Thor, Incredible Hulk, and Luke Cage. So it crosses 5 other epic lines. And if you're not somebody like me who's buying every single epic collection, then this is kind of important to have if you like Doctor Doom. The next one, I'm pretty sure, will be the one that will collect Supervillain Team Up. And that, I don't think we've had an epic collection yet. So that is pretty exciting. But again, unless you're like a Doctor Doom mega fan and you've wanted to read every Doctor Doom story, I just don't see really the point in that book. Okay, we have 2 more classic epics and then 2 modern epics that I happen to be buying. What makes a Marvel Epic Collection? Specific characteristics. So if you haven't collected them the whole time, Jade, a Marvel Epic Collection that's been going for over a decade at this point, I think 13 years, they're pretty much just like the DC Finest, but at Marvel. They pick a specific character or generally Marvel title. There's very few of them that are for a character like Doctor Doom that follows them throughout titles. Most of them are following a character that's got their own title, and they collect everything sequentially and in publishing order, not in reading order. So if a graphic novel got released later that falls earlier in reading order, we're going to get it where it was released. That's how the epics work. But they're great because it used to be at Marvel that if you didn't have Marvel Masterworks, which were those Silver Age collections that eventually extended to the Bronze Age that collected something from the start sequentially, if you weren't up to something sequentially in Masterworks, there was really no way to get it unless they did like kind of a random trade of it, or like a random, what was called a Marvel Premiere hardcover, which was just like a pretty cheap, really garishly restored standard size hardcover, or if Omnibuses covered it. So for a lot of things that you were looking for stuff that happened in the late 70s or the mid 80s that Masterworks hadn't gotten there yet, it felt like it was going to take our whole lives to get there. And so Marvel coined this idea of epic collections, and the original pitch for them was they were going to fill in all of those runs. They were going to fill in around the big stuff. They weren't going to worry about duplicating Masterworks. They weren't going to worry about duplicating Omnibuses. They became such big business and so popular with fans like me that Marvel actually wound up covering everything in epics for whole titles. And so typically an epic will cover an entire title line. If it's Captain America, it covers him when he was in Tales of Suspense and then into when he's Captain America, so on and so forth. So here's Thunderbolts. This is Thunderbolts Volume 4. This is an epic collection line that they're releasing sequentially, just like with Doctor Doom. However, much like DC Finest, epics came first. Epics can jump around and release in any order they want to. Hardly any of the lines started originally with releasing a Volume 1. Volume 1 was often the second volume that was released for a lot of the lines. This Thunderbolts one is really not all that interesting because, hold on, maybe it is. Maybe I'm lying. I did take some notes, though, earlier. This is, where are my darn notes? All right, I lost my notes. Oh, here it is, Thunderbolt Epic Collection. So what's interesting about this one is Thunderbolts has been completely collected. With the release of the new Thunderbolts Dark Reign Omnibus, we now have all of Thunderbolts in oversized hardcover, which is crazy. And apparently it's all sold out already. We always knew. Omar has always said, and I've always said, that that would be the most popular Thunderbolts Omnibus. Marvel finally listened, and lo and behold, it sold out quickly. This is from far before that. This is the original run of Thunderbolts. We're kind of around 2001 at this point. This gets to a point where we cross over stuff that's been collected in paperback for Thunderbolts. There was Hawkeye and the Thunderbolts. First there were Thunderbolts classic collections. Then there was Hawkeye and the Thunderbolts. This gets farther than those. So while some of the issues at the end of this have been in Omnibus, some of them have never been in paperback before. So if you skipped on the Thunderbolts Omnibuses, but you had like older Thunderbolts paperbacks, this is the first one you're going to need, which is going to intersect with those, but then also go past those. We still need a number more to get done. This collects through Thunderbolts 52. Thunderbolts ultimately gets into the mid 100s. It'll be interesting to see where they split into modern epic collections for Thunderbolts. Technically, we're probably only going to need 1 or 2 more to finish out the classic stuff before they'll switch it over to modern. If you've watched the Thunderbolts movie, this has very little to do with the movie. It doesn't have any characters that you would know from the movie other than, really nobody. And it's a very different vibe than the movie. The movie is kind of like a bunch of mercenaries who come together to form a family. The comic book is more like a bunch of villains who come together to put one over on the heroes while the heroes are gone in the Heroes Reborn universe. And then eventually they kind of decide maybe they're not terrible at being heroes. Okay, we only have 3 books left, so if you have not yet got the URL to the after party, please head there. You can start putting in your questions now. The first Namor epic is a complete double dip. Still waiting for volume 2 where they begin to collect actual Submariner. Dana, it's my fault, because I am one of the longtime proponents of that first Submariner epic. I just think that the story of him returning and kind of starting when he's in Fantastic Four and Human Torch finds him and he's like all in his beard and he doesn't know who he is, to then he kind of comes back, then he's in X-Men, he's in Daredevil. I think that's one of the best arcs of the Silver Age, and it's one of the first times a character had an arc across multiple books, because Stan Lee was writing almost all of them, or all of them, but that doesn't really exist too much in the Silver Age. So I've always thought it's really remarkable, and it always bugged me that the Masterworks didn't cover that, but Masterworks never double dipped that early in Masterworks. Later in the Masterworks line, they started doing more double dipping. So I did appreciate that it was an all double dip volume, because unlike Doctor Doom, who kind of just turns up and is cackles and is like, ah, ha, ha, Doom knows all. With Submariner, I really felt like we were getting somewhere with Submariner in those stories. And I think if you don't read them all, you're not well situated to start his ongoing. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong or that I agree. It's all double dip. And if you buy every Epic collection, that is annoying. But I'm just saying that actually I was really a big fan and proponent of that. Is Max still awake? Wow. Max is just chilling. I can't wait to see Doctor Doom star in how Victor got his groove back. Okay. 3 more. This is Avengers Volume 14. It is called Absolute Vision. We used to have a different trade paperback called Absolute Vision. This does not collect exactly what's in that, if I'm not mistaken, but I will check for you on Crushing Krisis, which is where I'm going in my other window to kind of look at where all of these things are collected when I am not sure. I've been working mightily to get all of the guides on Crushing Krisis updated again, because it's been a while, because I was dealing with all of that switching of hosts, which finally is done. The site is working. I'm so thankful to the new host, to all of my Patreon supporters. Made a big difference in my life. So now I can get back to actually working on the content of the site, which is I want to be doing. So Absolute Vision was one of those proto epics, because it came out in 2013, right on the verge of the epic collections happening. And it was actually 2 volumes, book 1 and a book 2. Book 1 had issues 231 to 241 and 2 annuals. Book 2 had issues 242 to 254. This is not quite all of that. It starts a little bit later at 238, but it does collect all the way through 254, and it does have annual 13, which is in that second book. So this is kind of most of both of those 2 Absolute Vision books, but a little bit of it is in a prior Avengers volume, which is a little bit outside of my grasp. Are we into Roger Stern here? Yeah, this is Roger Stern Avengers, which is pretty much the best Avengers. I don't think Avengers was ever better than Roger Stern, at least until 1998. I mean, yeah, DeFalco Avengers is fun, but Roger Stern Avengers is like classic. Like if you could absolutely buy this and then just enjoy the hell out of it. You don't need to have the thing before it or the one after it. And I know we often think of epic collections of like gotta catch them all Pokemon style, but like this is a great epic collection to just read and enjoy some classic Avengers stories. Okay, now I've told you I don't collect every modern epic line, because in some cases modern epics are literally just recollecting something that I have an exact trade of already under a different name. I do collect these 2 lines for reasons. So this one is New Avengers, which is the Brian Bendis New Avengers. This is New Avengers Epic Volume 4. It is called Secret Invasion, and it has all of those issues that intersected with the Secret Invasion plotline, although it doesn't have Secret Invasion itself. Marvel has never put events into their epic line the way that DC has started to do. The reason I collect New Avengers in Epic Collection is because some of the epics included some of the promotional Army and Armed Forces issues that I don't originally have. And my original collection of these, which are actually right on the other side of this wall in Kid Krisis' room right now, because she's been reading them, are all in oversized hardcover. And I wouldn't mind getting rid of those oversized hardcovers at some point. Because I kind of just want Avengers, as you heard me say at the very beginning of the stream, in standard size format. So this is me kind of downgrading to standard size format. There were some Bendis complete collections that existed, I think, oh gosh, almost 10 years ago now. And if you had those, you don't really need these. These are just reskinning those. I skipped those at that time because I didn't think I cared. Now I'm like, ooh, let's get them all in one uniform format. So that is why I'm buying these. This is not a good one to start on. Because so much of his main cast was tied up and the main story was tied up in Secret Invasion, it often feels like this is just kind of like the side story or the backstory of Secret Invasion. Is probably the least satisfying part of Bendis's run for me, if I'm being honest. Okay, and then we only have one more book. We finally made it to the bottom. This is Black Widow, Modern Epic Collection Volume 2. The reason I've been buying these is Black Widow has never been coherently collected before in Epic Collection. It just never really made a lot of sense in Epic Collection. So this, actually, there should be one more. There should be one more book. Did I kick it on the ground or something? No, I don't see it. Have to hunt the room for it later. There's supposed to be one more Modern Epic Collection. Okay, but back to this. The reason I get this is because all of this Black Widow material, this has Black Widow Deadly Origin. It has Black Widow 2010 1-8, which is by Marjorie Liu. It has Widowmaker, which she was in with Hawkeye. I just have this like hodgepodge. I think one of them is a premiere hardcover. Some of them are trades. Just to have them all in one place, collected in a coherent way, in the right reading order too, because you have to kind of do some shuffling to get everything in order. This even has a story by Kelly Sue DeConnick from Enter the Heroic Age. It has her one shot in Iron Man Kiss and Kill. I just really think that it's kind of, and it goes all the way through her Fear itself issue, right to the verge of Marvel now. So I guess they will keep doing more modern epic collections, but does that just go straight to the Marvel Now series? Hold on, let me look. Marvel Epic Collections of Black Widow. Let me just take a look at where that modern line stands. Yeah, so this is number 2, and we already have number 3, which collects her Marvel Now material, which I already have in trade, and I don't collect past Marvel Now. So this is actually perfect. This collects between 2009 and 2011, and it kind of takes us right up to that next one. So now I've, in just 2 books, the Itsy Bitsy Spider, which is Modern Epic Volume 1, and this one, Modern Epic Volume 2, Widowmaker. I have all of Black Widow from 1999 to 2011 perfectly in 2 books. And they will make a great omnibus at some point, because one of them is about 500 pages. The other one's about 460 pages. That's a great 900-page omnibus. You could even maybe get all of that third epic collection in there too, all in one omnibus. And we've had it on the poll that way for a long time, because we've said it's just modern Black Widow. You probably can get pretty far into it. Yeah. So that is my last one for the day. I thought I had a Hawkeye. Oh, I remember. I was considering getting the Hawkeye Epic Collections, because that's another one where I have them all, but they're all in like a variety of formats, and it's kind of annoying. And originally I ordered it, and IST couldn't get it from the distributor, sold out the distributor at that time. And because I had already calculated the shipping price, I was like, ooh, if I say no, I'm going to lose that perfect shipping price. That's how I wound up buying Genderqueer. I got Genderqueer and Lock and Key to fill in that order to replace that Hawkeye Epic. Okay, so a nice tidy stream of Haul Around the World. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry I did not answer every question, but again, I'm trying to stay focused on the haul to keep this a tidy time. There will be continued Haul Around the Worlds until morale improves, and even if the morale improves, because I haul a lot of things around the world. But this is the direction I want to start taking the hauls. I want to make sure that I'm kind of educating you about the series and what they collect and the why. In the future, I would love to bring up the Crushing Crisis guides on screen as I talk about where things are placed. I'm just still in the process of getting everything updated after I moved it to my new host. So, things to be aware of in the world of Krisis. Tomorrow, near mint condition, 5:30 US Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be talking about the DC Finest poll. Will be open a little bit longer than a week, so even if you don't catch the live kickoff, you have plenty of time to vote. I strongly encourage you to watch the live kickoff, though, because we're going to get to reveal a couple of interesting things about plans for the DC Finest line, and Dom of X has done such amazing visual presentation of the information. It's going to be worth it. I promise. Next week, here on this channel, I will be talking about my DC Finest picks on the poll, which could influence you or just might inform you. So please, if you're interested in more DC Finest chat, come back for that. And then if you're not, or if you do, or whatever your plans might be, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be back talking about DC Omnibus Fantasy Draft, which will include a little update on the Marvel Fantasy Draft on how you can submit your choices to me so I can score them when we get to the end of the year. I figured it out. And so now for the DC one too, you'll be able to submit your choices as well, but I'm going to talk about all of that in 2 weeks. So get the after party link if you don't have it already, because we're going to be there in about 2 minutes. And I'll wrap up by saying that, you know, it's hard existing in this world and wanting to see perfect representation everywhere. It's hard not seeing yourself represented. Like, you know, how often do I see somebody that really reminds me of me represented? And I'm a pretty easy one. You know, if the person's Italian, if they're white, if they have great hair, they represent me. But it gets really, really hard when you want to see yourself represented in books, in media, and there's nobody that looks like you or talks like you or acts like you or has the feelings you have. And I think, you know, I talk a lot about at the end of the stream about how important it is that trans lives matter, that Black lives matter, that we have to stop any Asian hate, that we have to support immigrants. They're just people, just like the rest of us. But a big part of all that is not only the political support for those things, but representation, and not only letting those people see themselves, which is fun, but letting you see them, letting your kids and the young people in your life see them, letting your parents and your friends see them, recommending books to people that are not just who they are themselves. You know, there's been a lot of studies done, and I'm not the expert on this, but I am a communications, fan, about how often it's hard to change somebody's mind, but it's easy to make them less prejudiced against something by just exposing them to other viewpoints. But the thing is that in our normal lives, how often do we get exposed to those viewpoints? Like, it's fine to say, yeah, maybe I support support immigrants, but do you know a lot of immigrants in your community? It might just be that your social circle's never going to include them, and that doesn't make you prejudiced, but it also doesn't mean that you have nothing that can erode your prejudice either. And so that's why I think it's really important that books like Genderqueer exist, and that we make a point of reading books that have, if we're white people, are we reading books and supporting the books that have Black heroes in them? Are we checking out Milestone? Are we checking out Mr. Terrific? If we are, if we're white or Black, are we supporting the books that have Asian characters in them? Do we read all those Pan-Asian characters at Marvel? Did we read the We Are Legends line at DC? Not because we need to throw money into the pot to support these huge multinational publicly traded companies, but because this is a way for us to get exposed to cultural aspects that we might not run into in our everyday life. And a huge part of being a great ally and a great supporter and somebody who's eroding hate throughout the world is to expose yourself not only to those people in the real world, but also their works of art, them in fiction, and how their culture is explained and represented and celebrated in that way. So I know you're all out there fighting to make sure everybody's loved and respected in the world. And I'm just here to tell you, guess what? Reading comics and sharing those comics with your friends and family and coworkers and acquaintances is a huge part of that too. It's why I have this book in my hand right now. It's why, oh gosh, hold on, I don't want to drop anything. We've had a no drop show so far. That's why Kid Krisis read all of March at age 10. That's a fine age to hand this to kids to. And even if you are age 100, you are still a fine age to read March and learn about John Lewis. So that is what I leave you with today. Please, until I see you next, whether that's in 2 minutes, tomorrow in the DC Finest poll, or in the next couple of weeks back here on the show, or possibly in an upcoming podcast, please do not have a crisis. Unless, of course, it's me.